a princess carrying deep, hidden wounds from a tragic childhood. Growing up amidst coldness, hostility, and harsh prejudices, Thalia gradually built a thorny shell to protect her heart. However, as fate leads her into unexpected relationships and incidents, buried secrets and long-forgotten emotions begin to surface. Can Thalia overcome her painful past to find her own light? An emotional journey of power struggles and a healing love story awaits your discovery. Join Lisa Review to follow the forgotten field and witness the touching journey and captivating developments of this series. The story opens with the nanny brushing Thalia's hair while praising her. "Princess Thalia, you look like an angel." Her identity is Thalia Rome Goethe, the second princess of the Rome Empire. Golden sunlight streams through the window into the room. Makeup products are spread across the table. She and her nanny are applying makeup in front of the mirror. Smiling gently while continuing to brush her hair, the nanny praises, "You truly look like Lady Cenobia." But Thalia does not respond. The nanny continues, "With such elaborate makeup, it feels like I'm seeing Lady Cenobia when she was 18. Hearing this, she immediately brushes the woman's hand away. This makes the nanny look at her with an awkward expression. Thalia's eyes are filled with wariness as she glares at her. Then she commands, "That is enough brushing. Bring the dress here." The nanny stammers, "Princess, please look." She then explains, making Thalia pause for a moment. "This is the dress Lady Cenobia wore when she first set foot in the imperial palace." Thalia turns her head to look at the magnificent dress. The nanny adds, "It seems her ladyship prepared it specifically for you," her eyes fixed on the formal attire with a hint of doubt. Unable to hold back her curiosity, she asks, "Nanny, do you even remember what my mother wore so long ago?" Smiling and holding the dress, she confirms, "Of course I do." As the nanny reminisces about that day, a flash of light appears in her mind. That day, how could I ever forget? Cenobia stood in her magnificent gown with a somewhat cold expression, looking like someone who did not belong to the mortal world. The crowd below whispered as they watched her. The nanny expresses, "It was to the point that I shed tears at the fact that someone so beautiful could actually exist in this world." The emperor stared at her without blinking. The nanny could not help her admiration. His Majesty the Emperor could not take his eyes off Lady Cenobia either, but she has no interest in listening and urges, "If you have time for such idle talk, finish my makeup." The woman happily replies, "Yes, I must finish it." She gently strokes her shimmering blonde hair. After the makeup is finished, Thalia looks truly exquisite in the formal gown. Standing beside her, the nanny can't help but praise, "You are truly beautiful." She adjusts the folds of the skirt while Thalia stares at herself in the mirror for a long time. Then, her hand lightly touches the glass, her heart in turmoil. "If possible, I want to be even more than my mother was." She thinks of the gaze of the nobles at the ceremony and prays, "If only everyone would look at me." Her eyes carry a hint of sadness. Though the sunlight shines outside, it cannot light up her heart. Thalia thinks to herself, "If only no one would bother looking at someone like Isla." She frowns, staring intensely at her reflection. Suddenly, Thalia grabs the lamp on the table, her heart filled with doubt and intense longing. Is this the kind of look an imperial princess should have? She raises the candlestick, aiming it straight at the mirror. Then, she smashes it down without hesitation, making the nanny scream in terror. The nanny drops to the floor, and the room falls silent. Thalia grips the handle of the candlestick tightly in her hand. She recalls the nanny's words, "His Majesty the Emperor could not take his eyes off Lady Cenobia." In her mind, she imagines that scene with disgust. Even so, it was nothing more than a filthy, adulterous relationship. She looks down blankly and announces, "This mirror is broken." Then she drops the lamp and orders the nanny, "Replace it." She recalls her mother's shameful rise to power. After the late Empress Bernadette passed away, "My mother was the one who wore that crown." Thalia's image is reflected through the shattered pieces of the mirror. That brazen sin has never disappeared. Her gaze is both cold and disgusted by her own identity. She then turns away decisively. As the sunset outside fades, she declares, "As long as I still exist, outside a knight is already waiting." He stammers, "You look truly beautiful today, Your Highness." The escort party stands at the door, unable to take their eyes off Thalia. Hearing this, she frowns and glares at him, reminding him, "Stop with the useless flattery. Let us go." She then steps into the carriage, leaving the awkward knight watching her go. Thalia sits in the carriage, looking out the window. Something outside captures her attention. The glowing red sun is still illuminating the sunset. Inside the banquet, melodic music is already echoing. Groups of nobles gather to talk, but in Thalia's heart, there is only one wish. "I wish tonight's banquet would be drenched in that color." Finally, the carriage wheels come to a halt. She looks at the carriage next to hers. Thalia bites her fingertip while observing her surroundings. The sun has gradually set behind the forest. She prays, "I wish a riot would break out and everything would turn into chaos." The gatekeeper's shout makes the nobles inside look out. The second princess of the Rome Empire, Her Highness Thalia Rome Goethe, has arrived. Thalia slowly enters the banquet hall. Everyone's eyes are fixed on her. She remains calm, facing the astonished stares with indifference. Seeing this, Thalia smiles mockingly at herself. I suppose I look like a plague to them. Suddenly, a man stands in her way. He asks awkwardly, "Is there a reason for your visit?" She looks up at him. He frowns, looking at her with great discomfort. Thalia thinks of the others and wonders, is he one of Ayla's worshippers? Then she laughs to herself at the thought. The man looks at her in surprise. Seeing this, she smirks even more mockingly. Thalia leans forward, making him blush and step back. She demands, "Am I not allowed to be here?" She smiles, her face close to his as she reminds him, "This is my father's palace." The man's face turns bright red as he quickly leans back. Thalia emphasizes, "And today's banquet is for my brothers." Her eyes remain cold even as she smiles and questions, "What is wrong with me being here?" The space suddenly falls silent as the man just backs away shyly. She stares blankly into the empty air. Then she brushes past him, gently smoothing her blonde hair. The highest dais is still empty. She walks toward the banquet table, her eyes instinctively drifting in that direction. She recalls the past, thinking of another banquet where two people sat there. Are they not here yet? That day, someone had vomited blood during the banquet. It was Ayla. She had covered her mouth, trying to hold it back. Then she collapsed to the ground in front of everyone, and it was Thalia who had poured the emetic into her wine glass. She thinks, after that humiliating incident with the emetic, it will be hard to see Ayla Rome Goethe's face today. Then she picks up a wine glass, smiling with excitement. Suddenly, her gaze turns still as she imagines. It looks as if that deep red heart is bleeding. In her mind, she pictures Ayla with a bloody body, and white flowers dyed a vibrant red. She holds the wine glass with a hint of regret. If only I could make that a reality, it would be wonderful. Then she raises her glass, her face full of anticipation as she imagines to make her vomit out her own organs until she dies. The image of Ayla vomiting blood repeatedly flashes in Thalia's mind. Her hand unconsciously tightens around the glass as she curses, "Die. Your weak body sitting in a pool of blood. Just die like that, Ayla." Thalia's eyes widen uncontrollably with bitterness. "Please, do not ever open your eyes again." Sensing a gaze, she instinctively turns her head. Berdian approaches with a smile and bows. "It has been a long time, princess," he whispers. The older the princess gets, the more beautiful she becomes. She only feels annoyed. "This guy," he smiles at her with excitement. Thalia recognizes him. This is Count Syrian. Then Berdian lifts the back of her hand and kisses it politely in greeting. She does not hesitate to expose him. "Did my mother tell you to come talk to me?" he replies. "Her Majesty, the Empress, is always worried about the princess." He then turns to look around, the smile still on his lips. "But even if the Empress had not asked, I could not possibly ignore you. Take a look around." She follows his gaze. The people around are staring intensely at her. Their eyes are both lustful and disrespectful, surrounding her like a flower. Berdian emphasizes, "Every mediocre man here desires you." She looks at him warily. They surely would not want to get caught in the Crown Prince's sights. "Are you an exception?" Hearing this, Berdian shrugs. The two stand in a corner, with eyes still fixed on them. He says nonchalantly, "I have been hated for a long time anyway. But thanks to that, I was given the duty of assisting you. Every cloud has a silver lining, right?" She glances at him indifferently and asks, "Did the Empress ask you to save her poor daughter, who is lost like a black sheep?" Berdian calmly takes her hand and leads her to the center of the hall, explaining, "Her Majesty asked me to help the princess so that you could fully enjoy the banquet." He looks at Thalia and smiles, "And she instructed me to do my utmost to help you shine brighter than anyone else in this hall." As they both stand in the center of the hall, he bows and asks, "It would be an honor to dance with the princess. Please, allow me." She looks at his hand with a hint of doubt, thinking, "I'm sure everyone wants me to get out of here." Facing Berdian's outstretched hand, she decides, or at least stay quiet and hide in a corner. She places her hand in his, her heart still in turmoil. "But I won't do that." Suddenly, a dazzling golden light appears. The people around look on and exclaim in admiration. The two begin their dance. She calmly observes Berdian. As he gracefully leads her through the dance, Thalia thinks, very skilled. She glances at the crowd, testing them. They too have their eyes fixed on her. Following the dance's rhythm, she raises her hand high. Then she intertwines her arm with Berdian's once again. The surrounding crowd cannot look away, their faces filled with astonishment. He holds her waist from behind, and the two are completely immersed in the dance. With a seductive gaze, she finishes the dance. A smile involuntarily forms on Thalia's lips. While the two are busy dancing, the gatekeeper's voice rings out again. The great crown prince of the empire, His Highness Gers Roem Goethe, and the first princess of the kingdom, Isla Roem Goethe, have arrived. Hearing this, Berdian also looks in that direction and whispers, "To be interrupted while having fun. What a pity." In the long corridor, Gers and Ayla walk side by side down the red carpet. She sees them and her face darkens with disgust. Those two are Ayla Roem Goethe, the first princess of the Rome Empire, and her twin brother, Gers Roem Goethe, the crown prince of the Rome Empire. The surrounding nobles quickly swarm them with flattery. "Your Highness, congratulations. Congratulations to you." Ayla smiles and responds to them. "You have heard the news. Thank you." Seeing this, Berdian and Thalia stop dancing and look over at them. Then they quickly turn and walk away. The whispers about the two of them continue incessantly. Her face darkens as she glares at the group of nobles. They are whispering and mocking her. She instinctively looks toward Gers and Ayla, who are laughing and joking, and screams in her heart. But a brilliant light seems to emanate from around them. She screams in despair, "Don't compare me to them." In contrast, Thalia feels as if she is sinking into a swamp of snakes and mud. Beside her, Berdian forced to smile. "It seems those two do not care much about your existence, princess." Then he regains his composure and asks, "What are your plans? Do you want to go and greet them first?" He then adds, making her bite her lip, "Isn't that why you came here?" Thalia's hand unconsciously tightens around her wineglass. She turns her head to look toward the second floor. Thalia's eyes widen in sheer amazement. It is Barcus who has arrived. He stands outside the palace gates, announcing his name to the guard. Then he enters calmly. The gatekeeper announces accordingly. Barcus Radgo Shirkan, Commander-in-Chief of the Rome Imperial Guard. His eyes indifferently observe the surroundings. The nobles also fix their gazes in that direction. Barcus walks up to Gers and Ayla. To Thalia's surprise, he bows. "Greetings, Crown Prince." The man pauses. He places his hand over his chest in a salute. Thalia stands from afar, watching the scene before her. She cannot hear their conversation, but Barcus reaches out to invite Ayla to dance. Her hand grips the wineglass even tighter. On the other side, Ayla is happily about to place her hand in his. Thalia's gaze stops at their hands. Her face darkens, screaming inwardly with jealousy. "Don't touch her." Over there, Barcus and Ayla have already taken hands and are talking excitedly. Seeing her expression and her trembling hand, Berdian awkwardly suggests, "Given the situation, I think it would be better for you to leave the banquet hall." Hearing this, Thalia finally calms down. "No." She walks slowly toward them, encouraging herself. "I did not come here to retreat in such a pathetic way." The crowd watches her and clears a path. Gers, Ayla, and Barcus all look toward her. As Thalia stands before them, the atmosphere turns silent. Gers looks at her with a displeased expression. She acts as if she does not see it and smiles. "Hello, my respected brother." She looks at Ayla, who is watching her worriedly. "And, my beloved sister." The crowd falls silent simultaneously. Only Thalia's voice can be heard. "I am so glad you have recovered your health." She tries to put on a caring smile toward Ayla. "Before this, you did not look very well." Ayla's voice remains calm, making Thalia freeze. "Thank you for your concern." She smiles gently. "Thanks to that, I am feeling better now." The smile on Thalia's lips stiffens, unable to react. She looks deep into Ayla's eyes, which are filled with disdain for her. But that expression, it is as if she is not even worth getting angry at, like she is looking at something worthless. Her hand holding the glass tightens further, her heart full of regret. I should have given her deadly poison, not just an emetic. In her mind, she has lost control. Her expression grows darker. "Even if I have to face a terrible punishment, I want to burn that face away, even if I have to be scorched forever in the fires of hell." Thalia thinks of Ayla dying and snarls, "I should have just killed her and been done with it." Beside her, Gers can no longer hold back. He frowns and snaps. "You still dare to show your face here, and in such a vulgar state at that." He leans in close to her face and whispers, "Your mother instructed you to seduce my loyal ministers, did not she?" But she responds calmly, "Acting like this is more human, is not it? A vulgar state. You are being too harsh." She lifts her skirt to remind him, "This is the dress my mother wore on the day she first met His Majesty the Emperor." She naturally shows off the entire dress she is wearing. Then she does not forget to emphasize, "It is a very meaningful dress. His face darkens with rage. She looks at them triumphantly and emphasizes, "Our father must really like this dress. Don't you think so?" Gez's face turns black with anger. He gnashes his teeth, unable to refute her. A hand touches his shoulder gently. Ayla praises softly, "Yes, it really suits you." She tries to reassure Gez. "Anyway, thank you for coming." Then she stands in front of him and reminds her, "Because today is a particularly meaningful day for us." She adds, "By the way, I also want to receive congratulations from as many people as possible." Her eyes widen with confusion. She holds Barkas's arm and smiles, explaining, "Our official wedding date has finally been set." She adds happily, "When the windy season begins, I will go to the east to become a member of the Shirkan family. Of course, before that, I will have to go on a pilgrimage to receive blessings from the saints." Hearing this, Thalia can only remain silent. Ayla becomes even more triumphant. "Since I must leave before it gets hot, this might be the last time I see you. Before leaving the palace, I am very glad to see you like this. At least I wanted to say goodbye to you one last time." The banquet hall falls silent except for Ayla's voice. "This banquet is for us. I hope you enjoy it to the fullest before you leave." Thalia mutters, "Is today the last day?" Unable to take it any longer, she swings her arm. "I want to bless your future days." Beside her, Barkas frowns, caught slightly off guard. Then he rushes forward to block Ayla, but he is too late. Red wine has been splashed all over her by Thalia. She looks down at her chest, her face panicked. Thalia's hand remains frozen in the air. The surrounding nobles also watch in panic. As for her, she smiles calmly and whispers, "I will pray every day that you soon become just like this." Thalia's smile is both beautiful and mocking. While Ayla holds her chest in shock, she repeats, "I will pray every day that you soon become just like this." Beside her, Gez's face darkens as he moves to rush at her. "You." But someone is faster and grabs her arm. Barkas raises her hand high. He grips it so hard that Thalia winces. She is startled to hear his voice filled with disgust. He looks down at her, his face dark as he growls every word. Boundaries that cannot be crossed, but the princess does not seem to realize that at all. She tries to pull her hand back, but cannot. His grip tightens even more. Thalia winces and cries out in pain. She looks toward Gez and Ayla as Barkas's voice continues, "Just how much more do you intend to degrade yourself before you are satisfied?" He leans close to her ear and whispers, "Are you still not satisfied after exposing your wicked nature to the very end?" She glares up at him. "Me? Exposing my wicked nature to the very end?" There is a moment of silence all around. Her expression is so crazed that it surprises even Barkas. "Stop acting so high and mighty, sir." She smiles and questions him. "Do you think you truly understand, even a little, the absolute worst of human nature?" His grip tightens further, making her tremble, but her voice remains mocking. "From your position, I am sure you find me very lowly." Barkas stares at her as if trying to see through her. Seeing this, Thalia smiles with contempt. "But as for reaching the absolute worst, I am still a long way off." She stares into those blue eyes, hidden within them. Inside her, there was already a swamp, a deep swamp waiting. Sooner or later, this man would push her into that swamp. Thalia's face is full of anger as she silently resolves, "If that is the case, before I fall, I will tear his future to shreds." Opposite her, he looks at her with even more disgust. Only then would it be fair. Behind him, Ayla grabs his cloak. "Barkas." She puts on a weak appearance and suggests, "I want to go change my clothes. Could you take me away from here?" Barkas turns back to look in silence. Immediately after, he turns and walks toward her. He places his hand on Ayla's shoulder gently. "As you wish." Behind them, Thalia watches as they support each other and leave. Her hand holding the glass drops down. Tears begin to well up uncontrollably. She also turns and walks in the opposite direction from them. Berdian stammers, "Princess." Then he suggests, "I think it would be best for us to leave the banquet hall immediately." She asks in confusion, "Why? The first princess told me to enjoy the banquet comfortably, did not she? Didn't you hear? I have not had enough fun yet." His face becomes even more troubled. "I greatly admire your courage, princess, but..." On the second floor, Gez is staring intensely at her. "That monster up there is staring right at you." His face is full of rage. She still looks over there calmly. How exhausting. Finally, Thalia walks out to the carriage. Behind her, Berdian sees her off to the carriage. Her foot slowly stepped onto the carriage platform. Suddenly, someone pushed her from behind, catching Thalia off guard. Her entire body tumbled forward into the carriage. She turned her head in shock. What was that? Opposite her, Gez looked at her with pure loathing. His face was dark with rage, ignoring the knight calling out, "Your Highness, what are you doing?" Thalia looked at him, filled with fear. He lunged inside, pinning down her dress. "Your very existence." His voice was chillingly cold. "We have barely managed to endure it." Gers grabbed her by the shoulders. She was pinned to the floor of the carriage as he muttered like a madman above her for a very, very long time. His other hand reached for her neck, leaving Thalia in a state of shock. Enduring, always enduring. He repeated it over and over like a maniac, and enduring again. His grip on her throat tightened further. Her body struggled to break free, but she could not move. Her fingers clawed at him until they bled, yet the hand on her throat did not loosen. He leaned in close, his cold face looming over her. "Sister, there is no need to provoke us further, because we already detest you." Gers's hand gradually let go. She struggled to regain her breath, coughing uncontrollably. Then, he turned and left the carriage. Gers looked at his own bleeding hand. Blood continued to flow steadily. Barkis and the knights looked on in alarm. He stepped outside and emphasized, "Remember this." He looked back into the carriage with disgust. "Your mother acting so powerful everywhere." The door slowly closed as Gers whispered, "And a filthy, illegitimate child, causing chaos in this palace. It is only temporary." Afterward, Barkis hurried to open the carriage door. "Your Highness, are you all right?" He froze at the sound of her laughter. Thalia looked at her bleeding fingers and laughed maniacally. She paused for a moment. Then she looked at Barkis outside the door with a hint of regret. "I will have to grow them out from the beginning again." Faced with her crazed smile, the knight and Barkis stood stunned. Thalia thought to herself, "This time I must sharpen them even more, so they can stab deep into the very marrow of their bones." She lowered her head, smiling helplessly. Everything is stained and dirty. Her eyelids drooped. In her mind, she thought of an injured bird in the mud. It lay there, motionless. As the rain poured down relentlessly, Thalia stood by a tree with someone. "Back then, I was just as filthy." She had first been brought to the imperial palace in fear. "Finally, the name of my mother's daughter has been recorded in the royal genealogy." Cenobia stood beside her, encouraging her. "Come now, this is your palace." She smiled excitedly. "Be happy, Thalia." She ignored the servants around them, whispering about them. Thalia was too terrified to even look up. The corridor of the palace was chillingly cold. She looked around in fear. A cold statue looked down upon her. The corridor was empty and devoid of any soul. Thalia screamed inwardly, "I am so scared." The servants looked down at her with cold faces, making her even more panicked. "I am afraid." Thalia's footsteps faltered. "It is so terrifying." Finally, she lowered her head and ran as fast as she could. The rain began to fall. An injured bird lay in a puddle of mud. Thalia stood still, watching it. Then she walked closer. Back then, it was to erase all traces of the late empress. In front of her was a garden that had been dug up. The reason was that her mother had ordered all the flowers and trees in the castle to be uprooted. She stared at the bird. Did this little one fall from the tree? Without hesitation, she leaned down. Immediately after, she slipped into the hole where a tree had just been dug, crying out in pain. Thalia looked at herself lying on the ground. She panicked and tried to stand up. "It is all dirty now." Then she looked down at the pile of mud. Thalia tried to climb out, but the sound of the bird behind her called her back. She turned her head to look at it. Then she turned back toward it. She stood silently, wondering, "Is that bird dead yet?" Without hesitation, Thalia reached out and picked up the fledgling. She looked at it contemplatively for a while. The bird in her hand continued to chirp. It was still alive. Its little feet twitched. Thalia observed it with wonder. The bird tried to nuzzle its head against her hand. She watched it with interest, without blinking. The little bird kept nuzzling her hand, and Thalia understood. This fledgling had just lost its home and had been abandoned by its own mother. She looked down at it with worry. "Are you cold?" Then she pressed her cheek against the bird to warm it. The rain grew heavier by the minute. She looked up from the pit. "What should I do?" Thalia glanced around the hole. One light step, and it would collapse further. She looked upward, trying to find a way out. But around her, there was nothing but the sound of the rain. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the edge of the pit. "What are you doing down there?" The rainwater poured down incessantly, soaking Thalia to the bone. She turned her head toward the mouth of the pit. Standing next to a tree that had been half dug up was a young boy. His gaze was cold through the veil of rain. Thalia stared intently at Barkis. He just stood there, looking down at her. She instinctively hid the little bird in her hand. The scene between them fell silent, save for the sound of the rain. Her eyes locked onto Barkis's pupils. Thalia's face soured as she emphasized, "Can't you tell by looking? I fell into the hole and can't get out." He only looked down coldly. "Why did you go down there in the first place?" Then, he also slid down. Barkis slowly approached Thalia. He stepped firmly onto the ground. Then he reached his hand out to her. "Take it." His gaze was still full of coldness. She looked back at him without a hint of wariness. She clenched her hand and refused. I can't. Then Thalia explained, I am holding something else in my hand. Barkis was confused. Is it something important? She answered immediately. It is not, he said coldly. Then throw it away. But she was stubborn. Even if it is not important, I can't throw it away, he frowned, looking at her helplessly. She widened her eyes in surprise. Without warning, Barkis simply lifted her up, making Thalia scream in shock. She shrieked in astonishment. He just reminded her coldly. Stay still. Thalia leaned back, making Barkis startle and repeat, Stay still. She fell silent, not daring to move, letting him carry her out of the pit. Suddenly, it was as if she saw something. Her hand relaxed a little. Barkis stepped through the mud and climbed up. The two of them soon stood next to the tree by the pit. Barkis instinctively looked down at his feet. He frowned and complained. This is terrible. Because you saved me, you ended up like this. I will compensate you. She blushed and asserted, I can buy you a new outfit much more valuable than the one you are wearing. Barkis carried her along while she talked incessantly. I will have someone prepare a generous amount of compensation for the servants. Actually, I am the daughter of a very, very great person. Hearing this, he glanced at her. You are so young, yet you act so grand, do not you? She blushed and bit her lip. She thought to herself, how dare he say that to the Emperor's daughter? Her face turned even redder at her own thoughts. And so, Thalia let him carry her through the rain. His feet were covered in mud. Then Barkis stopped by a tree. The bird in her hand suddenly chirped, piquing his curiosity. What is in your hand? She opened her palm to show him. Barkis stared at it, dazed. Then he looked up, confused. A bird, Thalia explained with a blush. It fell into the mud. That is why it looks like this. But this little one probably, Barkis placed his hand under hers. She thought to herself, is much cuter than this. He took her hand in his. Thalia was astonished. Barkis looked down, his gaze indifferent. Your fingers are already cold. Suddenly, Thalia looked up and asked, how long were you standing there? She stared at him intently. Did you know? There is a silver crown reflecting in your eyes. Hearing this, Barkis was also surprised. Barkis's lips moved as if to say something. In the end, he did not speak. The rain continued to fall even more heavily. His pupils constricted. She looked straight into them with her clear eyes. The two stood under the shade of a large tree, neither saying a word. She silently observed Barkis. In her eyes was a vast blue sky. Barkis also did not take his eyes off hers. As they stood looking at each other, he felt as if he was sinking into an infinite sky. He had realized something. A call broke the silence. Young lady. Both turned their heads in that direction. It was the nanny, calling out worriedly, young lady. She stammered, I. Then she informed Barkis, I have to go. Barkis looked up at her without responding. He slowly lowered Thalia to the ground. At that moment, the rain stopped completely. Her still soaked body was illuminated by the sunlight. Barkis stared, mesmerized. Their hands were still held together, and the little bird was still chirping. Only then did he look down at it again. His hand gradually pulled away. Barkis knelt on one knee on the ground. Then he gently set her down. Only when she was standing firmly did he stand up. His hand also gradually withdrew. She looked toward the nanny and thought, it is cold. Thalia looked up at Barkis with a bit of hesitation. Finally, she held out the little bird and suggested, please take it with you. She lowered her face, not daring to look him in the eye. The reason was, on the other side, Barkis also looked down. What she did not have time to say was, my hands are too cold. Yours are warmer. He did not hesitate to take her hand. They both looked down at the little bird being warmed. Barkis gently held the back of her hand. The bird had fainted. Thalia looked up in shock. He gently picked up the bird to check its condition. She stood silently, watching. Barkis also looked down at her indifferently. Then Thalia hesitated. Can that little bird, can it live? Her face looked as if she were about to burst into tears. Seeing this, Barkis comforted her gently. It can. Next, Thalia dashed away. In front of her was a dirt path. Thalia ran while gasping for breath. She cut through the grass of the garden. Suddenly, Thalia turned her head back to look. Her speed slowed down. Barkis was still standing in the same spot. His gaze was still following her. Thalia stopped her feet and looked back curiously. He was still staring intently at her. The space became silent. She wondered, why has not he left yet? A thought flashed through her mind. Could it be? Is he watching me leave? Thalia blushed, lost in her thoughts. She just stood there silently. Then she turned back, intending to run toward Barkis, but the nanny grabbed her hand and pulled her back. Where on earth have you been? She started. The woman questioned, Do you have any idea how long Lady Cenobia has been looking for you? Ignoring her protests, she pulled her along forcefully, complaining, "What is with this appearance? You still have to go meet His Majesty. Your clothes are all ruined. What are we going to do?" Finally, she dragged Thalia away in one go. "Really, why would you go for a walk in this kind of weather?" Thalia could not resist and was pulled away. She stole a glance back. But Barcus had already left. Later, at the castle, the knights were carrying belongings. "Put it here. No, over here." From above, Thalia observed them. "Hold that spot steady." The entire imperial palace was in a bustle. Knights were gathering together. Send more men down, for in a few days it would be the pilgrimage of the first princess and the crown prince. As descendants of Darian, the great emperor who founded the Rome Empire, this was a mandatory ritual to be performed after coming of age. Typically, females went on the pilgrimage before marriage, while males began the journey after turning 20. The knights were arranging the luggage. Based on the logic that they were born on the same day and hour, they naturally had to receive the god's blessings on the same day. Preparations for the first princess and the crown prince were being rushed. Her gaze stopped on Barcus, and the person responsible for escorting those two was, of course, he was grooming his horse in his capacity as the commander of the guard, Barcus. Thalia looked down from the castle, unable to take her eyes off him. She just sat quietly by that window. Barcus also looked up. He smoothed back his hair that had been dampened by the rain. His face was cold and enchantingly handsome. Thalia, from above, could not look away. She sat still, reminiscing. That day, it had rained just like this. Thalia sat in the dining room. That evening, neither her father nor her mother appeared. While eating bread, she felt a pang of regret. "If I had known, I would have chased after him. I regretted it so much. Since that day, whenever I had free time, I would wander around the back garden." Thalia's shadow lingered there, but she never encountered that person again. One night, she was climbing into bed. Thalia curled up in her blanket. "It is so cold." She remembered Barcus's warm hands. As the sun gradually rose, she told herself, perhaps it was just an illusion because I was too lonely. In the long corridor, Thalia followed an attendant. This way. Her eyes were a bit sorrowful as she thought, actually, he does not exist at all. Then she absent-mindedly looked out at the training grounds. A young boy caught her attention. It was Barcus. She stood still, watching him practice his swordplay. Thalia was astonished. Then she turned and asked the attendant, "Do you know who that is?" He looked over at the training grounds and explained, "They are the apprentice knights in training to join the Imperial Guard. They are all descendants of prestigious noble families." She pointed toward Barcus, "The one over there." But the attendant grew impatient and urged, "His Majesty is waiting for you. Hurry up." She was reluctant, but had to leave. Thinking of her father also made her a bit sad. "My father, who is also the Emperor, did not care about me at all. I did not like him either because he had stolen my mother away." Thalia stood before the Emperor and heard the command, "From now on, you must learn the etiquette of the royal family." She looked at him and thought, "See, he won't even look at me." The Emperor looked at the schedule in his hand and announced, "I have arranged many good teachers for you." Even though I looked exactly like the mother he loved, the Emperor wrote while adding, "From now on, come to the main palace before noon to study. You must do your best to catch up on the lessons you have missed all this time." The sunlight shone through the glass door. She left through the corridor. Thalia tried to peek out at the training grounds, but there was no one left outside. She still stood there watching. As sunset gradually fell, she thought with a bit of hope, will he be there tomorrow as well? The next day, Thalia arrived carrying her books. She ran hurriedly down the corridor. Then she looked through the glass again. She widened her eyes. On the other side, a group of people were practicing swordsmanship. Thalia's eyes sparkled. Opposite her, a sword was knocked away. Barcus had defeated someone in the squad. Then he quickly stepped forward to help his friend up. They laughed and talked together. Barcus gently used his shirt to wipe the sweat from his face. Thalia was captivated by that action and stood watching. A new habit began to form in her world. After that day, I could watch him every time I went to class. In the training grounds, Barcus was still sword fighting. He was gasping for breath from the practice. Thalia observed quietly from behind the glass. She remembered the little bird and wondered, what happened to that bird? Did it die in the end? She lay sprawled on the windowsill. Thalia looked up, imagining the bird in the sky. "So where did you bury it? Or is it healthy now and you have released it to fly away?" She remembered Barcus's eyes again. Do those pupils still contain the light of that silver crown? Suddenly, Cenobia appeared behind her, startling her. "What are you looking at?" Thalia jolted back. The woman looked at her gently. Then she smiled slightly. Thalia bowed her head awkwardly. "Mother." Following her gaze, Cenobia also looked out at the training grounds. She found the target. It was Barcus in the crowd. The son of Grand Duke Shirkan. Only then did she learn his identity. A Grand Duke. She smiled and asked, "Do you want that child?" She screamed in her heart, "Grand Duke Shirkan." Thalia was lost in thought. I guessed he came from a noble family, but Cenobia lightly touched her cheek. She whispered, "Do you want that child?" The space became silent. She waited for an answer. Thalia's face turned bright red. Seeing this, Cenobia knew the answer and burst out laughing. She lifted her daughter's chin and kissed her cheek. Then Cenobia whispered, "But you must not refuse." She turned the girl toward Barkis outside. "If you want a reward, you must please your parents first." On the windowsill lay her book. Thalia's face was flushed red, because her mother had found her out. The woman leaned down and stroked her hair. Opposite them, he was still practicing his swordplay. She whispered, "If you want." Cenobia's voice was hypnotic. "Mother can give that child to you as a gift." Having said that, she smiled calculatively. Thalia quickly grabbed her book from the windowsill. She hurried away. Thalia left her mother behind and ran off with her books. Her face was red again from shame, as she wondered why. Thalia closed her eyes tightly. Why did I run away? Behind her, the woman was still watching her. Her heart was in turmoil. I missed my mother every night because she never came to see me. The woman before her felt like a stranger. I am afraid. Then Thalia remembered the gossip of the servants. When we were still with the Taran family, I could endure all kinds of judgments from everyone. At that time, she still held her gently, because I had my mother by my side. She remembered the day she stood with the emperor. Now mother is the empress of the empire. The servants still looked at her with loathing. A strange mother, a strange place, and people she did not know. That night, Thalia lay in bed, trying to hug her own body. She prayed, "Someone please hold me." His image was a blur in her mind. Soon, it was morning. She sat up and looked out the glass window. The servants scrubbed her body, to the point where her body was covered in bruises. They pulled her hair violently, but she only tried to endure it, not resisting this invisible torture. Her hair was tied tightly behind her body trembling from the pain. After changing her clothes, she looked like a white porcelain doll. A thought appeared in Thalia's head. I have to find him. She walked along the grand corridor. The maids outside did not care. It will come back on its own anyway. Outside in the garden, Thalia walked among the flowers. Her eyes seemed to be searching for something. She sheltered herself under the shade of a tree, her gaze directed toward the large pillars. Then Thalia could not hold back her curiosity and stepped forward to observe. The sunlight grew brighter. She raised her hand to cover her face and looked around, a bit tired. "My feet hurt so much." Her steps were slow. "I even have blisters on my feet." The thoughts in her heart made Thalia feel regretful. What if I never see him again? Then she stood still and told herself, "Why am I so obsessed with him? We only met once." Thalia's eyes were fixed on the tips of her shoes. No, her heart was dark. That is not it. And she remembered that day, in that pouring rain. His shadow fell from the mouth of the pit. He could have ignored a little girl trapped in a hole and walked away, but he did not. She thought of Barkis's mud-covered shoes. He accepted, having his clothes stained, and went down into the mud pit to bring me up. Then she remembered that warm embrace. He even held me in his warm arms and looked straight into my eyes. She also did not forget the dying little bird in their arms. He took the dying bird and held it carefully. Thalia's eyes welled up with regret. That much is enough. The sky grew even sunnier. She stood still, not knowing what to do next. Then she sadly wondered, should I go back? Suddenly, she looked in a certain direction. A familiar figure appeared. Barkis was walking right in front of her. Thalia's face was filled with joy. They were walking on the same path, but the distance was quite far. She screamed in her heart at the sight of Barkis. It is him, in front of her. He was still walking slowly. She cheered. I found him. Then she hurriedly ran toward him. Her steps grew more and more urgent. Her voice faltered. She tried to call out, "Hey!" Her hand reached out, but Barkis had already vanished. Wait. Her face was flushed from chasing him, but she was too late. Where was he going in such a hurry? Her foot tripped over a rock. Her body stumbled uncontrollably. Thalia looked up, but there was no one left in front of her. She looked around frantically. Then she sat down under a nearby tree. Thalia hugged her knees gloomily. She closed her eyes and sank into her thoughts. The leaves rustled gently in the breeze. She lifted her head and sighed. Thalia's gaze fixed on the sky through the canopy of leaves. Suddenly, she heard a sound nearby. She turned her head toward it. A garden radiant with flowers and sunlight appeared. Inside the garden, Barkis was kneeling before Ayla. She froze in shock. On the other side, Ayla was smiling happily. He also looked up at her. A faint smile played on the corners of his mouth. The scene sent a shock through Thalia. She screamed in her heart, "No!" Her footsteps faltered. She just stood to the side, watching. The two of them remained unaware. She wailed internally, "I do not want this." The two of them both turned their heads toward Thalia. She stared intently at Barkis. His gaze was full of coldness. She prayed, "I want him to look only at me." His eyes were filled with indifference. Instinctively, Thalia stepped toward them. Ayla's eyes widened. Barkis still looked at her blankly. Thalia bit her lip, hesitating but encouraging herself. It will be fine. She thought to herself that she was a princess too, then tried to smile at them. "Hello!" No one responded to her. She looked at Barkis in confusion. Does he not recognize me? His cold eyes looked up at her. She thought, last time I was covered in mud. Then she shyly spoke first, a few months ago. But Ayla covered her face and screamed in terror. Her shriek startled both Thalia and Barkis. "No. Stop it. Anywhere else is fine. Just not here." She was stunned and confused. Ayla lunged into Barkis's arms, crying out, "I beg of you, Barkis." Her voice was so frantic and distressed that Thalia froze. "Drive that child away. Don't let her set foot in this place." She wailed against his chest. "Make sure I never have to see her again." He held her. Then he looked at her with cold eyes. Barkis gave a sharp command, "Leave this place immediately." Hearing this, Thalia looked at him in shock. Her face flushed, and she turned to run away. Her steps grew faster, her heart in turmoil. What is this? What is happening? She was bewildered. Why? Thalia ran faster and faster. A hand reached out for her. The sound of a heavy fall, followed by a scream. Thalia's body was flung far away. She clutched her stomach in pain. Gers clenched his fists in rage and shouted, "How dare you?" His eyes were ferocious. "How dare a thing like you set foot in this place?" Then Gers kicked her repeatedly. "Die." She could only use her hands to block the kicks, while he cursed, "Die, just die for me." Two servants quickly pulled him back. "Your Highness?" Thalia looked at him in terror, but Gers only grew more hateful. "Disappear from this world, you filthy brat." The next day, she stood silently in the corridor, overhearing the gossip. "Prince Gers has every right to be angry. Empress Bernadette has only been dead for 6 months." She gripped the window curtain. Two maids continued to gossip, ignoring her as she looked out the window. "Shh. Who cares anyway?" Thalia's eyes were filled with sorrow. She recalled the way Ayla and Gers had looked at her. Outside, the rain began to fall. She thought, "It seems that less than a month after the late Empress passed away, my mother brought me into the palace and immediately erased every trace of her existence." Her mind went back to the garden from yesterday, and she realized that garden must be the only trace left of the late Empress, a place my mother has not managed to erase yet. Outside the palace, the rain poured down heavily. Thalia pulled the curtains shut. She curled up on her bed. Then she slumped against her knees and whispered, "Barkis Redgo, Shere Khan." She thought about his relationship with the royal family. The late Empress and Barkis were distantly related. More importantly, the late Empress was said to have protected Barkis when he first arrived at the palace. She lowered her eyelids, lost in thought. "I only just learned his name. Perhaps he will never smile at me. He might even see my mother as his eternal enemy." She remembered the cold look Barkis gave her, and me as well. Her memory also recalled Ayla's tragic scream. No, and Gers looking at her with loathing. Filthy wench, Thalia asked herself in her loneliness. Why should I be the one to feel guilty? Her gaze was sorrowful. I really did not know anything. Finally, she buried her head in her pillow and sobbed. I am not the one at fault. I did not do anything wrong. She remembered being neglected. Her bathwater was always ice cold. The servants looked down on her, scrubbing her skin with brutal force. The food was cold and hard to swallow. The servants' mocking and hateful glares. It was all as if it were a punishment for her. She remembered Cenobia holding her and comforting her. "You are the crystallization of a true love. You do not need to care what others say." She had replied warmly, "Mother." She walked through the corridor, accompanied by the whispers of the maids. Empress Bernadette was a very kind person. Her Majesty did not deserve to die in such a tragedy. The group looked up and mocked her loudly. That brat is not even a real princess. She is just the product of an illicit affair. A maid nearby whispered timidly, "Hey, is not that a bit too much?" They looked up at Thalia, who was still standing silently. Her face was flushed with humiliation. Finally, she rushed up to the second floor. The two maids watched her figure go. They whispered something. Their eyes looked at her with even more disgust. The bullying grew worse day by day. And then, one day, Thalia sat at the table, and the food tray surprised her. She watched the steam rising into the air. Her face was filled with shock. The food was piping hot and carefully prepared, like a feast. She looked around. It was strange that there were more people than usual. Her heart suddenly felt a spark of joy. Could it be? The dining room fell silent. Thalia wondered hopefully, Have they finally decided not to punish me anymore? She gently picked up her spoon. Perhaps they are ready to forgive my mediocre existence. Her eyes were fixed on the warm broth. Thalia brought it to her mouth. Her eyes lit up at the meal. It is so delicious, so warm. Suddenly, there was a sound of laughter nearby. She froze. The maids were trying to bite their lips to keep from laughing. Thalia observed them. They tried to look away, so they would not burst out laughing. The atmosphere around her made her feel afraid. The air became stifling, just like always. She slowly lowered the spoon to the tray. Thalia's eyes went wide. She used the spoon to lift out a mouse from inside the soup. Immediately after, she collapsed to the ground. The servants turned to clean up, ignoring her. Thalia knelt on the floor. She clutched her mouth. A bright red liquid flowed out, making her panic. Later, meals filled with insects left her in a state of gloom, isolated, lonely. What was the real problem? In the most magnificent place in the world, worms floated in her food bowl. Bark and animal carcasses were cooked together. I had to fight against my own hunger and thirst. Fear overwhelmed Thalia, making her hide in a corner. Cenobia snapped. What on earth happened to you? She arrived impatiently with the nanny. Then Cenobia reached out and lightly pulled the jade string on her hat, looking down at her and explaining, I only came because your nanny was making such a fuss. She called out in fear, Mother. Tears flowed uncontrollably, and then Thalia burst into tears. Mother! She sat by the bed while Thalia tried to pour out her grievances. So now, I only dare to eat the fruit and honey the nanny gives me. But Cenobia only listened in silence. She sobbed louder. Those people keep insulting you and me. Finally, she cried out desperately, Mother, please stop them. Don't let them bully me. Her face was red from crying. Her voice choked with tears. Make sure I never have to see them again. The woman put her hand to her chin and looked at her in surprise. Why should I do that? Thalia stared at her mother in shock. She grabbed her by the shoulders and reminded her, Thalia, this place is your palace, and the servants in this castle are your possessions. Cenobia reached out to wipe the tears from the corner of her eye. You are 4 years old now. You can't even manage your own belongings, and you come running to me crying like this. She withdrew her hand and rested her chin on it. You are the daughter of the emperor. Then she looked at her with contempt. I truly cannot believe you would let those low-lifes torment you like this. Thalia was too stunned to react. Cenobia's gaze toward her was like looking at vermin. It is shameful that my daughter is so stupid and weak. What is this? She tried to call her mother. Trembling, Mother. The woman lowered her head, thinking. Then she raised her index finger and spoke. How about this? She suggested. I will give you a useful guardian. He is a man I have spent a long time domesticating. He will be quite useful if you use him well. Then she stood up, much to Thalia's surprise. She grabbed the hem of Cenobia's clothes and refused. I do not need someone like that. Tears began to flow. I only need you, Mother. But she only looked down at her indifferently. Thalia looked up at the stranger who was her mother and forgot how to cry. Cenobia slowly pried her hand away. She toyed with the palm of her hand and called, Thalia. Then she lowered her head and whispered, It is true that everything starts with me. Cenobia continued, But do you know why they do not dare put mice in my soup? Why my bath water is always hot and fragrant? Why my meals are always laid out like a feast? Cenobia's voice was cold and slow. The things they do to you, they would not dare do to me in their dreams. Do you know why? Let this mother tell you a secret. A faint, triumphant smile played on her lips. It is because they are terrified of me. She planted the thought in her head. Some of them even respect me. Then Cenobia thought of the men obsessed with her. Of course, there are also countless people who hate and look down on me. Those people might not be wary of me, but they do not dare make me a target for bullying. Her face turned pale at her mother's words. Because I am a truly dangerous existence. Cenobia's gaze was full of threat as she looked at her. Her hand gently stroked her hair as she instructed. Keep that in mind. Cenobia adjusted her cloak and smiled. The strong and the beautiful become the targets of fear and envy. Thalia looked up at her mother in horror. She added, But the beautiful and the weak are always destined to be prey in the hands of others. Finally, she left, leaving Thalia standing there stunned, watching her figure. If you do not want to be ruthlessly trampled by the countless beasts out there, at least you should hide your weak side. The moon outside shone into the room. Thalia curled up in her blanket, trembling with fear. She clenched her hands and realized, the weak. No one will stand up to protect me. She thought back to when she was kneeling on the ground, vomiting up food mixed with insects. I will be trampled. Her head was filled with dark thoughts. Trampled. The weak will be trampled. She remembered Cenobia's face as she judged her. She said, You are the daughter of the emperor. I truly cannot believe you would let those low-lifes torment you like this. Thalia's tears flowed incessantly. She curled up and screamed in her heart, Mother is right. My weakness stems from the fact that I admit I am guilty. I only know how to bow my head and listen to the gossip, the way I walk, my timid gaze, my hesitant words. She remembered the servant's eyes. The moment I act as if I deserve to be treated poorly, her hand gripped the bedsheet. Instinctively, they would realize that I would not resist. The next day, sunlight shone through the room. Thalia looked at herself in the mirror, confused. Since when did I become so gaunt? She stood silently, looking at herself. Then she remembered the mouse in her soup. I look no different from the gutter rat in that soup. The room door was pushed open. A maid walked in. "You're up early. Come here. Let me help you get ready." But Thalia refused. "I do not need you." She frowned in annoyance. The maid put her hands on her hips and reminded her, according to royal rules, Your Highness is obligated to maintain a perfect appearance at all times. These childish tantrums Thalia ignored her and shouted repeatedly, "Nanny!" The nanny rushed in frantically. Yes, she directed a cold gaze toward the other servant. "From today onward, the nanny will be in charge of my preparations. My mother gave her permission yesterday. You may leave," she stammered, but Thalia glared at her with a sharp, threatening look. "Are you planning to go against the Empress's orders?" She was silenced and a bit confused. What is wrong with her? The space fell silent. She turned to the nanny and instructed, "You heard me right. From today on, bathing and dressing are all your jobs. Wake up and do your work." She replied sleepily, "I understand, young lady." She screamed and slapped her. "How many times do I have to tell you to call me Your Highness before it sticks in your head?" Thalia panted with rage. "If you call me young lady one more time, it won't stop with just a slap." The nanny stared at her, stunned. Then she stepped out of the room. Someone was standing guard outside. Thalia looked at the man. She frowned and concluded, "Is he the useful guardian mother mentioned?" Then she ordered Berens, "Follow me." He followed behind her. She sat in the dining room. Then she ordered the servants, "Bring the food up here." The kitchen maid placed the food in front of her. Thalia looked down at the food on the table. She bit her lip in dissatisfaction. Then she reached out and stirred the soup. Her eyes were full of rage when she saw the insects inside. She pointed at the chair next to her and ordered, "You, come here and sit down." But there was no response. The servants looked at her in confusion. She backed away and refused. "Forgive me, Your Highness." Then she turned to leave without permission. "I still have many things to do." Then she reached for the pitcher on the table, and without hesitation, she threw it straight at the back of the woman's head. The woman screamed and stumbled to the ground. Thalia stood watching her and questioned, "How dare you turn your back and ignore my command?" Then she turned her head to look at Berens. The servants were too terrified to react. She pointed at the woman and ordered Berens, "Make this woman sit next to me right now." He nodded. The woman whose head was bleeding looked at her in panic. Then she sat back in her original spot. The woman was pulled up in shock. "Wait a minute." She calmly picked up her spoon. Beside her, the woman had been pushed into the chair. She looked over calmly. "You know," her hand held a spoonful of soup toward her. "To express my gratitude for your efforts in putting this into my meal every day, I have decided to share today's meal with you." Hearing this, the woman panicked. She pushed the food tray toward her, while the woman panicked. "Your Highness, I." She smiled, but her eyes were ice cold as she ordered, "Eat." The space fell silent. The servants were in a panic, but Thalia still looked at her calmly. "You are the one who put this in for me to eat, so why can't you eat it now?" she stammered. "I only—" She did not let her refuse, and shouted the command, "Eat it immediately." The woman looked down at the soup in horror. Finally, she turned and ran away in panic. Berens grabbed her by the neck and dragged her back. He pulled her and threw her back into the chair. The maid stammered every word. "I am truly sorry. I promise this will never happen again. So please, just this once, I beg Your Highness to forgive me." She threatened, "If you do not eat every last drop, do not dream of walking out of here on your own 2 feet." She instinctively looked down at the sword at Berens's hip. Then she screamed in fear. "Please, have mercy," she reminded her. "I am showing you mercy." Her words were like a death sentence for her. "Instead of killing you instantly, I am giving you a chance to live. If you understand, then shove it all down your throat." The woman lowered her head and did not respond. Her body instinctively trembled with fear. Beside her, Thalia slowly picked up a silver knife. She looked at Berens and ordered, "Can you place this woman's hand here?" Then Thalia stared at the knife and whispered, "If you insist on ignoring my kindness." Berens placed her hand on the table. She muttered, "Then I will just have to cut off your fingers as an example." As she raised the knife to strike, the woman screamed, "I will eat." The maid's face was terrified. "I will eat. I will eat every single drop." She grabbed the spoon. Then she swallowed it incessantly, much to the shock of the surrounding servants. Afterward, There were sounds of incessant vomiting. The maid's hands instinctively trembled. She emphasized, "Swallow every drop until I can see the bottom of the bowl." Thalia turned her head, looking at them with a cold gaze. The servants were silent, not daring to look her in the eye. At that moment, she was like a demon submerged in darkness. Her gaze swept over all of them. The servants bowed their heads, not daring to look up. They avoided Thalia's gaze. She looked forward again, where the maid was trembling on the ground, and ordered, "Take her away." A youthful voice echoed, "And bring me a new dish. This time, remember to make something I can actually eat." Since that day, the bullying stopped completely, as if it had all been a lie. Everyone treated me with extreme caution. The maid brushing my hair was trembling with fear. The nobles looked at Thalia with contempt. She is truly cruel. Rumors spread quickly that the hatchling of a venomous snake had crawled into the royal family. Then one day, Cenobia smiled and opened her arms to her. "Hello, Thalia. You look very lovely today." She looked at her without responding. Tears instinctively flowed, but she turned her face away, not wanting to look at Cenobia. She had to approach and coax her. "I know you are angry, because I have not visited in a long time." Cenobia gently stroked the corner of her eye, then leaned down and whispered, "Forgive me. It took me quite a while to prepare this special gift for you." Thalia wondered. Gift? She smiled with great delight. "I heard you have successfully tamed those rude servants." Next, she pointed behind her and explained, "You have made me very pleased, so you must be rewarded." She looked in the direction of her hand. A figure walked in from outside. His steps were perfectly calm. Cenobia informed her about this man. "From today on, this handsome knight will protect you." The space became still once again, with only the sunlight shining down. It was Barkis, with a cold expression. He bowed to her and introduced himself. "I am Barkis Raidgo Shirkan." Thalia stared at him, dazed. He added, "I will serve by your highness's side until you come of age." She rejoiced in her heart. It is him. She felt a bit nervous. What should I say? Opposite her, Cenobia was still standing next to Barkis, smiling at her. But his gaze toward her was full of coldness. Thalia froze for a moment. Then she remembered the memory of him kneeling beside Ayla. At that time, he had smiled and stared at her gently. But the gaze Barkis gave her was full of coldness. Her steps instinctively withdrew. The sunlight shone down on them in the silent space. She felt a bit disappointed and thought to herself, inside this palace, the image of Barkis carrying her on that rainy day suddenly returned. At that time, he had gently taken the bird from her, and the boy who was once my small ray of hope. Then she remembered Barkis's look of loathing. Get out of here immediately. Also that day, Gers had beaten and cursed her. Filthy wench. Thalia broke the silence. Hey! In her heart, she told herself no. Her words were full of arrogance. Stop looking down and greet me properly. Do you not know how to show respect to a princess? Hearing this, he was also surprised, and she realized one thing. You are not my hope. Barkis bit his lip and did not respond. Next, he bowed before her in a salute. Thalia's eyes were sharp as she looked down. She looked at his bowing figure and told herself, You will become my pain. Barkis bowed respectfully. Yes, princess. Thalia thought of a comparison, an excruciating, ultimate pain in the Rome Empire. Currently, a group of people are preparing their belongings. Ayla blushed as she looked around. Her gaze stopped on Barkis, who was by the stables. The horse next to him stepped closer. He instinctively reached out to stroke it. The maids, standing beside Ayla, urged her, Aren't you going to go over and speak with him, princess? She blushed shyly. Barkis. He looks more human now than he did when we first met. Ayla recalled Barkis's ash-grey eyes from the past. He had been as empty as the discarded shell of an insect. He had entered the imperial palace at a very young age. Barkis had been bound and blindfolded among priests. There, he underwent grueling training, where they brainwashed him to become a loyal servant of the empire, numbing all his emotions. My mother knew of this and did her best to protect him, but at that time, he had lost not only joy, anger, sorrow, and delight, but even the most basic human desires. Barkis was like a soulless husk. The late empress had tried to comfort him, acting only on orders. He was like an empty vessel with no sense of hunger or sleep, all his desires suppressed. In the present, Ayla lifted her skirt, intending to approach him. She thought to herself, once this mission is complete, Barkis will leave the guard and begin the process of inheriting his title as Grand Duke. Ayla was lost in thought. Barkis is always polite, and occasionally even gentle, but I still find it hard to believe that he will one day be my husband. Meanwhile, Barkis was still tending to his favorite horse. Not a single trace of emotion showed on his face. Ayla looked at him, her face involuntarily reddening. That handsome man had once stood steadfastly by my poor mother's side. She moved closer to him, understanding in her heart. This is merely a political marriage to consolidate power. But once I become his wife and bear him an heir, if I patiently offer my affection for many years to come. Barkas's sharp, cold eyes turned toward her. Ayla told herself, then one day, I will be able to melt his frozen heart. However, facing those eyes, she felt a momentary chill. He spoke indifferently. Is there something you need? She stammered. I was just curious how the preparations for the pilgrimage are going. Almost finished. It took longer than expected. The weather is getting hotter, so this journey will be difficult. Ayla clasped her hands together, a bit awkwardly. It can't be helped. It is all because of Gers. Previously, Gers had demanded, we need at least 20 servants, a jester, a private chef, and a tailor. She added shyly, I am sorry for causing you so much trouble. This is not something your highness needs to apologize for. This had to be done sooner or later. But Barkas continued calmly tending to his horse, replying, His Majesty is quite mild compared to the temper I prepared for. Considering he is sending away his precious older sister, this level of nagging is understandable. Her face turned pensive. When I am gone, Ayla turned her head back to look at the palace. Will Gers be able to stand against that cunning woman on his own? She looked at Barkas and suggested, after we are married, if it is not too much of a burden, I would like to visit the palace periodically. Ayla hesitated. There will be a mountain of work to handle once I become the Grand Duchess of the Shere Khan family. I should not have made such a childish request. But Barkas replied calmly, as long as the journey is not too exhausting, Your Highness is free to come and go as you please. He emphasized his point, making Ayla freeze. Wasn't this marriage alliance created to strengthen the Crown Prince's power from the very beginning? She felt a bit sad. Thank you for understanding. Meanwhile, he remained focused on his horse. Ayla looked up as if she had something more to say. She lightly touched his arm. Then she suggested, I know you are busy, but could you spare me a little time? She lowered her head awkwardly. There is something I want to give you before we depart. In a place where the surrounding flowers were in full bloom, Ayla held out a handkerchief she had embroidered herself and explained, I tried to sew the Shere Khan family crest. According to tradition, I should give a handmade handkerchief to my fiancé before the journey begins, right? I tried to sew the Shere Khan family crest. According to tradition, I should give a handmade handkerchief to my fiancé before the journey begins, right? Barkas took the handkerchief. She became even more flustered. Of course we are travelling together, but still, he looked at it and thought to himself, this is a truly thoughtful gift. Then he responded, making Ayla blush, I will treasure it. Suddenly, a voice interrupted their conversation. Commander, a soldier announced, His Majesty. The boy knelt in salute. I have been ordered to bring you to see His Majesty immediately. Ayla frowned and thought, it is definitely Cenobia. What is she plotting? This journey was decided by the entire council, and our marriage has long been pushed for by the conservative nobles. Her inner self was filled with resentment. She is the woman who forced Barkas to stay by Thalia's side for 7 whole years immediately after his appointment. Despite the Grand Duke's objections, all just to drive a wedge between Gers and Barkas inside the castle. A story was being passed around, once upon a time. In a certain village, there were 2 brothers who lived in harmony and loved each other dearly. Suddenly, a demon who hated such things appeared and threw a massive block of gold before them to sow discord between the brothers. Overwhelmed by the brilliant glow, the brothers fought each other for the gold, eventually destroying one another. Beside the throne, Cenobia stood there, smiling. Ayla stood frozen. She bit her lip, staring at the woman with pure rage. The golden demon. But Cenobia simply smiled nonchalantly. She turned to speak with the emperor beside her. To Ayla, it felt as if that block of gold had taken human form, blurring the vision and enchanting the heart of a once respected monarch, staining a woman's life with tragedy, and forcing us siblings to live in utter agony and humiliation. The emperor's gaze looked down at Ayla. Beside him, Cenobia stole a secret glance. Ayla looked toward her and thought, and now that demon has given birth to another son, one who threatens Gers's position. Her hands clenched into fists. Gers, someone like Thalia is nothing. She is just a stupid girl, not worth your anger. Ayla observed her surroundings. But Astros is different. Behind the boy were his attendants. She understood. The expectations of those who cannot stand your short temper are gradually shifting toward that child. Can't you see it? The emperor urged Barkas and Ayla. Why are you just standing there? Show your respect. She explained calmly. Because I wished to see my father, I followed Lord Shere Khan here. Please forgive my unannounced arrival. He waved his hand and looked up. You may come to see me whenever you wish. Ayla stole a look upward. Thank you for your generous words, father. In her heart, she thought, does my face remind you of my mother? Beside him, Cenobia took the emperor's arm and reminded him, "Everyone is here now. It would be better if your majesty explained everything to them, as the first princess will find out soon anyway." Neither Barcus nor Ayla understood what was happening. The emperor continued, "I called you here today to announce a change regarding this pilgrimage." Barcus confirmed, "Please speak, your majesty." "I am listening." He announced indifferently, "Thalia will also participate in this pilgrimage. Arrange for more guards and prepare her luggage for the journey." The two of them looked on in shock. Ayla was confused. A woman of the royal family is only permitted to go on a pilgrimage when she is about to be married. She questioned, "Why are you letting her go at this time?" Cenobia smiled casually, "Because Thalia will also be married soon." Ayla looked up in horror. Barcus's face also darkened coldly. The woman repeated once more, "Because Thalia will also be married soon." Only then did Ayla understand. Even if she was a child born of a scoundrel, Thalia was still a princess recorded in the royal genealogy. There was no way a marriage could proceed in total silence. Barcus frowned. "The timing of this marriage is quite a coincidence," but Cenobia explained calmly, "The proposal has only just been sent, so it is not an official engagement yet. The emperor and I are actively considering it. How wonderful it will be for the royal family to receive good news in succession." Barcus asked skeptically, "May I ask who the lucky man is?" Cenobia smiled. She answered, "I am certain you have heard this name before." The image of that man appeared in Barcus's mind. "It is Berdian Syrian, the head of the Syrian family." The two had not yet recovered from their shock. Ayla's expression changed as she heard the woman add, "She has been of age for some time now, and has reached marriageable age. I find him to be a very suitable match for her." They both knew that man. Not at all he was the man who had pursued Cenobia when she was still a daughter of the Taran family, the longest-lasting relationship among the Empress's many affairs. They both remembered the dance between those two. She is letting her daughter marry the man who once pursued her. Has she gone mad? Come to think of it, he had even escorted Thalia at the last banquet. Barcus looked down blankly, showing no emotion. The emperor waved his hand and ordered, "Now that that is settled, quickly prepare for the second princess's journey." Barcus quickly followed suit. "I understand." Ayla watched him bow to accept the order. Feeling stunned, she followed him out, pressing, "Are you really planning to take Thalia along?" Ahead, Barcus walked faster. Ayla tried to keep talking. "Cenobia must be plotting something. This marriage is clearly just a pretext, I suspect." Ayla was interrupted by him. "That," his cold voice echoed across the stairs. "Is that all you have to say? Even if we do not know what the Empress is up to, you have accepted taking her along. Exactly what do you expect from me?" He stood at the door and looked up at Ayla. Barcus's face was cold as he questioned her. "Do you want me to defy His Majesty's orders?" She was frightened by his attitude. The two stood before the entrance. Ayla hesitated. He explained coldly, "His Majesty is the monarch of this empire, and I have sworn an oath of loyalty to the royal family. From the beginning, I have had no choice but to obey orders." Barcus's face showed no expression as he emphasized, "Isn't that exactly what you royals always demand from us nobles?" With that, he turned and left. Ayla reached out for him, but it was too late. Finally, she threw her arms around Barcus in regret. "I'm sorry. I was just worried and took it out on you." She pleaded with a red face. "Please do not turn your back on me so coldly." Barcus remained silent and did not respond. He replied calmly, "You do not need to be worried." Ayla looked up in surprise. "What is the Empress plotting?" He gently stroked her head to comfort her. "She cannot harm your highness." His face was full of certainty as he asserted, "I swore to the late Empress that I would do my best to protect you and the Crown Prince." Ayla felt a surge of warmth in her heart. This man, he easily moves and settles my emotions. The honor, reputation, and authority of a princess are all meaningless before him. She gripped his cloak and bit her lip. This cold embrace had never been warm, even after being together for over 10 years. He held her in his arms, and Ayla felt a bit of peace. "That is right. As long as this man stands by my side, there is nothing to worry about. Nothing at all." He looked up at the sky. "Barcus, what on earth are you looking at? Those empty, bottomless eyes." It was as if they were always fixed on a place far, far away. Back at the castle, Thalia opened her sky-like eyes. She looked at her fingernails with regret. "I have lost my secret weapon." Her nails had been neatly trimmed. The wounds on her noble brother had surely healed with the help of the priests. Thalia rested her chin on her hand and wished, "If possible, I want to use it on Ayla, on those eyes that look at Barcus." At this thought, she accidentally scratched her finger until it bled. The sunlight from outside shone in. She complained, "It is so hot. I do not see Barcus around here, so I should probably stand up, should not I?" There was a knock on the door that made her look over. "Come in." The door gradually opened. A young boy with reddish-brown hair entered. She stood silently, watching him. The boy's eyes darted around. This was Astros. Thalia scratched her head. "What are you doing here?" Astros said excitedly. "I snuck out of the castle to see you, sister." She furrowed her brows in confusion. Then she remembered the last time she saw him. "We have the same parents, but our situations are worlds apart. I am the seed of an illicit affair, while this child is the legitimate son of the Emperor and Empress, born after their official marriage." She looked at the boy with loathing. Afterward, she had carried the child away. Since Astros's baptism, this was the first time I had seen this child at such close range. Cenebia's gaze toward her was full of disgust. "Mother will not allow me near Astros, fearing what I might do." She questioned, "Did you come here by yourself?" If Mother found out, Astros looked out the window and explained, "I did not come alone. I came with Berens." He glanced inside warily. She also frowned with little friendliness. Finally, Thalia stood with her hands on her hips before him. "So why did you come to see me?" He explained. "I heard you were going on a long journey." "So?" She rolled her eyes skeptically. "I am going on a long journey." Astros looked up innocently. He looked at his sister. "Mother said you would also participate in this pilgrimage." Thalia burst out laughing, making him recoil in fear. She questioned him, making him freeze. "What else did Mother say?" He continued. "Mother said you would soon be married. A man called Count Syrian has sent a proposal." Her eyes widened in surprise. Berens stepped up beside Astros. He looked at her warily, while the boy looked on blankly. Thalia's face darkened with rage. Her knuckles tightened. "So you came here to congratulate me? You want to have a happy farewell because the nuisance of the royal family is getting married and leaving the palace, is that it?" The boy stammered. "We are siblings from the same mother." The boy felt a bit of regret. "If you get married, it will be very hard to see you, so I wanted to come and talk before that happens." Then he shyly lowered his head and continued, "I always thought it would be wonderful if we could be close like our older siblings. That is why I came looking for you." Her face darkened as she told herself. A smart, lovely prince, born to the Emperor and Empress. Thalia stared at Astros with pure hatred. "Because of that child, I have become a completely worthless existence." Her status was like an extra in their happy family photo, a hideous stain that needed to be erased from the perfect picture. Thalia's voice remained calm. "Do you hope I will sacrifice myself to serve you, just as the first princess serves to put her twin brother on the throne?" Astros explained in panic. "I did not mean that at all." But she continued to snap at him. "Even if you did not intend it, our mother has already laid out a plan to use me for your benefit. My marriage is being arranged to provide you with advantages." Hearing this, Astros stared at her, stunned, a child raised in protection and care. Then Thalia recalled her own childhood. He had never experienced staying up all night in fear, nor had he ever faced the blatant hostility of others. Her gaze toward Astros grew even colder. "I do not intend to be your kind and devoted sister, not even a little bit, because perhaps what happens today will be your first heartache." She leaned down and smiled, but her voice was bitter. "I hate you as much as I hate those twins." Astros's tears suddenly fell. Thalia said coldly, "If you understand, then please get out of here." The sunset gradually faded. Thalia walked quickly through the corridor. The maids were surprised to see her. They bowed and stammered, "Princess." Later, in the study, Thalia stood before the door to the secret chamber. Inside, test tubes were filtering something. Books were piled high on the shelves. Cenobia was curled up in a chair, reading something. She entered, taking off her hat with an annoyed expression. "Mother Astros came to see me earlier." The woman's face showed little expression as she looked at her. The door to the secret chamber had not yet been closed. A liquid was still dripping down. Wicks were still burning low. Pots of medicine were still boiling. She repeated herself, but Cenobia still did not respond. "Astros came to see me." This made Thalia frown. The woman would not even look at her. She questioned. "The boy said I am to be married soon." She remained focused on the paper in her hand. "I did not know Astros cared so much about you." She was furious at the woman's attitude, still not looking at her. Thalia screamed in frustration. "Why do I have to find out about my own marriage through that child? And what is this pilgrimage for? What are you plotting this time?" Cenobia slowly took off her glasses. "Plotting? Your words are truly unpleasant." She impatiently smoothed her blonde hair. "You have reached marriageable age. That is all." Then Cenobia stood calmly before her. "The proposal came from a suitable candidate at the right time, so I simply moved it forward." Thalia was shocked. "That snake Syrian is a suitable candidate." With a look of sheer annoyance, she scoffed. "I suppose you have considered him thoroughly." The woman touched her lips. Her face flushed. "If you are asking whether Syrian can perform a man's duties, yes, he is. The man possesses excellent skills." Her words left Thalia stunned. "If you wish, he will be more than willing to serve you. Thalia screamed in dissatisfaction. I do not need a disgusting man like him. I would rather bite my tongue and die than let him touch me. Cenobia turned her face away, ignoring her. Then I will choose another groom for you. Then she reached for a paper nearby. I have also narrowed down a few other suitable candidates. She also looked down. Images of those men, along with her mother, appeared in her mind. It was a list of men who worshipped her mother. Thalia's face turned pale. Then she screamed. I do not want to get married. Stop pretending to care about me. Just ignore me like you have always done. Cenobia calmly interrupted. So what you mean is, I do not want anyone other than the heir of Grand Duke Shirkan. Thalia's eyes widened. Opposite her, the woman was looking at her with cold eyes. If you desire Barcus, you should find every way to have that man. I kept that person by your side for 7 whole years. She glared, leaving Thalia frozen. And yet, what exactly did you do during all that time? Her face was panicked. She knew everything. Cenobia reminded her, in just a few months, the man you want will become the possession of another woman. The space fell silent. Then she smiled kindly again. Thalia, I devised this plan, entirely for you. Cenobia lightly touched her cheek and whispered, helping her mother's precious daughter escape her current misery. Her lips quivered as she spoke. You have 2 paths ahead of you. The room was filled with Cenobia's voice. One is to seize the man you want at any cost. One is to seize the man you want at any cost. The other is to become a pathetic failure. Her cold gaze served as a reminder. I chose the first path, and now I have everything I want. Thalia bit her lip as she listened to the mockery. But if you lack the ability, then accepting another suitable match and pretending to be happy like a winner is also an option. It sounds quite pathetic, but since you are going to be a loser anyway, should not you at least maintain a shred of dignity? She tried to cover her ears, but the woman's voice still reached her. This trip is the final chance I am giving you. Afterward, as she ran through the forest, that voice still echoed in her head. Think carefully about the path you will choose. Her heart was in turmoil. Do it for yourself. Do not make excuses. The next morning, someone complained about the mountain of luggage. Are you really planning to bring all of this? Thalia shot him a glare. She questioned him irritably. Is there a problem with my luggage? This was Edric Rubon, an Imperial Guard. He stammered. I understand that you wish to maintain your royal dignity. He looked at the crates of her belongings piled high. But bringing hundreds of dresses and jewelry like this is unnecessary unless you plan on changing 5 times a day. Thalia grimaced in annoyance. This guy was a newcomer, so he clearly knew nothing, yet he dared to talk back to her. She snapped, leaving Edric stunned. 5 outfits is nothing. I will change 10 times a day if I want to. With that, she turned to leave. Traveling all day in a carriage will make my gown filthy, and I refuse to wear dirty clothes for even a second. Edric stood frozen. Are you kidding me right now? Thalia looked at the jewelry in her chest. If I want to outshine Isla, even this is not enough. I should have stolen the diamond necklace the Emperor gave her. She felt a pang of regret. No, I should have taken the entire gemstone box. Since Mother seems to want me to ruin Ayla's marriage, she probably would have let me borrow it. Then she thought about her mother's fanatics. After all, the Empress had been forced to dismiss some of the servants she had arranged for Thalia due to Geraz's opposition. Those who were rejected had eyes that sparkled as they said, If it is the Empress's command, I am more than willing. Thalia winced. She did not like having those mother-obsessed people around her either. Thalia looked at the caravan. Honestly, she did not want any servants at all. She had to avoid looking like that at all costs. The atmosphere of the journey was split into 2 opposing sides, the group of clumsy dwarves and the group surrounded by servants. She opened the carriage door, thinking, it is probably not too late to go back and get the gemstones from the Empress's palace. A familiar voice made Thalia's eyes widen. Not ready yet, Edric explained. As you can see, it looks like we need another luggage carriage. She recognized him too, Barcus. He looked at the pile of luggage, rendered speechless. Then Barcus glanced over. The assistant was struggling to load the chests onto the carriage. Before him, the chests were piled up like small mountains. His face was full of helplessness. Thalia, meanwhile, knitted her brows. Barcus stepped forward and explained, This journey will pass through 6 major cities. You can buy whatever you need along the way. Leave everything unnecessary behind. She pouted. No, how do I know what I will need? He continued to explain softly. As for dresses and jewelry, there are many developed industrial and commercial cities in the northwest. You will have countless opportunities to shop, so stop torturing the servants. But she disagreed. How ridiculous. You are just trying to make me look like an extravagant princess, to make me look inferior compared to Ayla, are not you. His expression remained cold. Since when did you start caring about your reputation? He added. From the beginning. No one ever intended to compare you to the first princess, so stop worrying about nonsense." Thalia swung her hand in a rage, but Barkis caught her wrist, blocking the slap. Then he turned to the knights and ordered, "Leave everything behind, except for the essentials." She swung her other hand. "Let go of me." He grabbed her other wrist and reminded her, "We depart in 1 hour. Hurry up." She tried to pull her hands away, but could not, so she bit her lip. Thalia, fueled by shame and anger, screamed, "Who do you think you are?" But Barkis only looked down at her coldly. Her face was contorted in rage as she struggled, while he held both her hands firmly. Losing her patience, Thalia kicked his shin and yelled, "How dare someone like you have a say in what I leave behind or take? Do you think you have become someone important or something? You are not even a Grand Duke yet. At most, you are just a knight of the Imperial Guard. And yet you dare treat the Empire's princess this way." Their argument left the attendants in shock. He looked at them coldly.
"What are you doing? Hurry up!"
Barkis commanded, "Leave the luggage immediately." The attendants bowed. "Yes, sir." Tears of humiliation involuntarily welled up in Thalia's eyes. The command of the future Grand Duke of the East and commander of the Imperial Guard carried more weight than that of the Empire's princess. This was no different from saying she was a princess in name only. She screamed at the attendants, "Get your hands off my things right now. If a single item of mine goes missing, I will have your heads." But Barkis suddenly grabbed her by the waist. With a dark expression, he hoisted her over his shoulder. Thalia was too stunned to react. A moment later, she was tossed into the carriage. Barkis knelt before her. He leaned in close and whispered, "Sit down and stay quiet." Thalia's face flushed red with shame. She thought to herself, "I would not be treated like this if Barkis recognized me as a member of the imperial family." She could not resist slapping Barkis, thinking, "He would never throw Isla the way he just did to me." Barkis narrowed his grey eyes at her. He did not dodge the slap, which left Thalia in shock. He pointed toward the mark on his cheek. She instinctively backed away in fear. Barkis spoke first. "Consider this my punishment for touching your highness without permission." That said, he braced his hands on either side of her, pinning her in place as he warned, "However, I have no intention of indulging your highness's tantrums any further." He leaned in and whispered, "Remember clearly that I am no longer your personal knight." With that, Barkis turned and left her alone in the carriage. She stared at the door in fear. Outside, Edric was directing the attendants. Thalia snapped out of it, biting her nails in a fit of rage. She thought about the times she had lost her mind before. "Normally I would rush out there and—" He would look at her with eyes full of loathing. Thalia took her nails away from her mouth. "But if I do that, Barkis won't just stand by and watch." Not long after, the carriage began to move. She curled up on the seat. A sliver of sunlight shone through the window onto her. The wheels began to turn faster. Thalia slumped against her knees, feeling the jolts of the road. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. She turned her head to look outside. The nightmare journey had begun. She was extremely wary of this trip. The procession set off around the palanquin. She prayed, if only this parade would march straight into hell. If only we could all march into our graves together. Fireworks to celebrate the departure were launched. If only everything would just end here. Nothing would be better. They moved through a narrow mountain pass. The route of the royal pilgrimage followed the footsteps of Darian, the founding emperor of the Rome Empire, from north to west, then from the west back to the north along the Silvisca River. Back when the continent was still divided into 10 kingdoms, Darian Rome Guerta, a member of the Quinn royal family, moved to the central region to escape the invasion of the Balto kingdom and became the adopted son of Count Valender, leader of the Osria tribe and Darian's uncle. Later, Darian unified the tribes of Osiriya and gathered powerful supporters in each country to unify the 10 kingdoms. This large-scale parade began at the imperial palace, a sacred ritual to honor his achievements for establishing a powerful empire after 20 years of constant warfare to unify the 10 kingdoms. At the same time, it was a momentous event. The appearance of the great emperor's descendants before the public was a way to prove the dignity of the imperial family. Leading the procession was Gers, riding his white horse. The soldiers shouted in unison, "May the gods bless the descendants of Darian." Powerful cheers echoed along with the army. The citizens also enthusiastically supported him. Gers waved back to the shouts of "Your Royal Highness, Crown Prince." The palanquin beside him was also opened. The crowd looked on in awe. Ayla slowly opened her eyes. She smiled and waved gently. The crowd roared, "Her Highness the Princess." Exclamations rang out. "How can someone be so beautiful? May the gods bless the princess." The cheers as her palanquin passed were endless. "Gods bless her." The shouts remained lively. "May the gods bless the descendants of Darian." Until they saw Thalia's carriage, the crowd went dead silent. They watched the carriage pass in silence. Then they looked at each other, whispering in disdain. That is the second princess. The bastard. Edric, riding alongside, also heard those words. People said the second princess was so cruel that after beating her servants mercilessly, she would throw them out or even kill them. He brought his horse closer to the window. Then he forced a smile and whispered, "Why do not you pull open the curtains and greet everyone?" But there was no response. For a long time, there was only silence. Edric was a bit worried. Her Highness is still sulking after the scuffle earlier. He thought to himself, that face is beautiful enough to make people see her differently, and yet she is completely lacking in tact. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. If she acted just a bit more approachable, plenty of men would willingly offer their hearts and souls. Edric's expression turned somewhat admiring. How many personal knights have quit because of her temper? Lord Shere Khan must be an angel to have stayed by her side for 7 years. Then he remembered the sight of Barcus carrying Thalia over his shoulder. Even though the Lord was not the type to sit still and take a hit, Edric's gaze landed on Barcus up ahead. He thought, for a man as loyal to the imperial family as him to act like that, just how terrible must she be? Truly unbelievable. Finally, Edric concluded, perhaps the second princess has a natural talent for making people hate her. Time passed quickly. The army made camp by a river. The soldiers and Edric were talking. I will be ready right away. Good. They all looked in the same direction. Around Thalia's neck hung a sparkling necklace. She was dressed up magnificently. Edric was horrified. Wait a minute. He watched her figure in confusion. The whole group is about to set up camp for dinner, and she suddenly dresses up like that. A voice called out, making Thalia stop. Your Highness? She turned to look at Edric. He froze in his tracks. In his eyes, her radiant image was reflected. Behind her, the firelight illuminated Thalia's golden blonde hair. Both Edric and the soldier were wide-eyed with astonishment. Thalia tilted her head, looking at them in confusion. He instinctively stepped back. She narrowed her eyes, noticing their expressions. Edric swallowed hard in surprise. Suddenly, Thalia stepped forward irritably. I do not like it here. He still had not fully recovered as he looked at her. Thalia put her hands on her hips and added, so, set up camp somewhere else. He was dazed. What? His mind was overloaded by her words. I do not like it here. Set up camp somewhere else. All his amazement at her beauty vanished. Just as I thought. This woman, the moment you let your guard down, she starts acting up again. He tried to explain, this campsite was chosen by the Imperial Guard for safety reasons. We cannot change locations now, but Thalia impatiently cut him off. Who asked for your opinion? She grumbled irritably. I'm ordering you to change the campsite. You just need to obey. Edric hesitated. The person with full authority over everything on this pilgrimage is Lord Shere Khan. He emphasized, I will say it again, we cannot leave the formation of our own accord. But she had already turned to leave. It is fine as long as Barcus gives permission, right? Finally, she turned and walked straight toward the main tent, leaving Edric in a daze. He flared up. Was she just using this as an excuse to pick a fight with Lord Barcus from the start? Then he hurried after her. Is there something that displeases you? He was baffled. Why did she have to make a scene on the very first night of the journey? Thalia snapped. Everything. I do not like being near water and forests. It is crawling with insects. Edric tried to advise her. Griffins and winged monsters have been seen in this area. The forest acts as a natural shield against large monsters. She snapped back with a sharp tone. Safety? What safety? I have been bitten twice by mosquitoes already. If I sleep here all night, the insects will eat my skin alive. And the noise from the forest, I can't stand the rustling leaves, let alone the birds chirping. How do you expect me to sleep like this? Edric's mind was overloaded again. His ears felt like they were being pierced. He broke into a cold sweat, feeling the despair of witnessing something incomprehensible. His voice still trembled. We are camping for more than just a day or two. If you do not start adapting now. She lost her patience and walked faster. Change the campsite? Why am I being forced to endure this? But Edric quickened his pace to advise her. Everyone is exhausted from marching all day. We can't wander around looking for a new spot for such a trivial reason. He lost his temper. Stop acting like a spoiled child and go back to your carriage to rest. Immediately after, Thalia delivered a sharp slap to Edric's face. He stood stunned as she vented her rage. How dare you give me orders? She pulled him down by his shirt to remind him. I am the Emperor's daughter, and you exist only to serve me. Thalia furrowed her brows and emphasized, if I say to walk all night, then your destiny is to walk from dusk until dawn. Then she let go of him. Impatiently, she left him behind. So, stop talking until it is your turn, and get lost. Behind her, Edric's eyes bulged with rage, but he could do nothing. He remembered, I wanted to toss her into the carriage just like the Lord did. He felt miserable having no one to back him up. He watched her figure, wondering, will I be able to endure this wicked woman's cruel behavior until the end of the journey? She glanced at the group of attendants who were watching. The group looked away guiltily. Among them must be the spies her mother had planted. Her intention was likely to eliminate all of Gez's support. Thalia's face turned pale with worry. But if the target is Barkus, finally, she reached the main tent. I must separate from this campsite. If I maintain a distance, it will be harder for Mother's spies to act during the night. Outside, the black horse saw her. Their eyes met. She stepped into the tent. Then, with hands on her hips, she proposed, I want to change the campsite. She impatiently pulled back the curtain. But my illustrious knight says he can't go anywhere without your permission. Thalia was still grumbling, while Barkus was washing his face. Your subordinate seems to think the rank of the Rome Imperial Guard commander is higher than that of the imperial family. I truly do not understand how the rank of a commander could. She stared at his upper body. He shot her a cold glance. Thalia's eyes slid down to his chest muscles. Then she looked down at Barkus's waist. She froze. Her face turned beet red. Regarding this half-naked state, the first time she had made a scene and pushed him into the lake was when she was 14. Barkus spoke first, the word rank coming out of your highness's mouth. He leaned in close to her, reaching for his shirt on the rack. It sounds quite ridiculous. Thalia's face crumpled. What? Meanwhile, Barkus put on his outer shirt. He buttoned it up as he explained. The hierarchy exists to control those beneath me, and knights like me must listen to members of the imperial family like you. But she ignored him, stubbornly insisting. Go clarify with your subordinate whose orders take priority. Barkus replied quietly, unless you wish to be punished for the crime of insulting the imperial family. Then he calmly walked outside. She stood there stunned, watching him because she had been ignored. Thalia ran after him frantically. Ignoring my words makes you feel satisfied, does not it? Barkus kept walking ahead without responding. Her face turned red with shame. I would rather have him get angry. She grabbed the back of his shirt and pulled him back, her body pressed against his arm as she looked up. I bet you have been looking forward to this. Her eyes were full of rage. You must be so smug that you can finally ignore the orders of the woman you hate. That is why you did not even bother pretending to listen when I spoke. But Barkus grabbed her hand and pulled it away impatiently. I could at least pretend to listen, if your highness's words sounded reasonable. Then he left, brushing off the spot where she had just touched. Seeing this, she gnashed her teeth in fury. He sees me as something filthy. I was wrong. If I am this miserable already, maybe it would be better if this man disappeared from the world. Thalia sneered. My words sound unreasonable to you. Her voice made Barkus and those around him freeze. Then, should I speak in the language of beasts, your savage ancestral tongue, perhaps then you would understand? They all looked toward him, covering their mouths in shock. She looked toward the grazing black horse to vent her anger. I can neigh like a horse if you want. That would probably suit you better, since you always prioritize horses over people anyway. He also looked in that direction and admitted, I would rather talk to a horse than deal with your highness. My horse is much easier to communicate with than you. At least it does not complain all day, and exhaust everyone around it. Her eyes widened in absolute shock. Barkus looked down at her with a cold, mocking gaze. Your highness never hesitates to attack the weaknesses of others, yet you bristle at even a minor retort. Do you act so recklessly because you believe no one can be as cruel as you? Thalia gritted her teeth, thinking to herself, what do you even know about me? The air fell silent. She thought, who else in this world understands the rotten nature of humanity better than I do? That is why I chose to be cruel from the start. If I did not, they would trample me. She clenched her jaw. Finally, she turned away and made an irrational declaration. I have said it. I want to move the campsite elsewhere. Give the order to your knights immediately. I did not come here to argue pointlessly with you. Thalia looked in another direction, trying to be patient and taking a deep breath. He replied, I have no intention of indulging your whims. Stop wasting your energy and go back to rest. She screamed. I am not asking to move the entire camp, so why won't you allow it? Barkus remained patient. I am under no obligation to explain the details of my decisions to your highness. She threatened. I am the emperor's daughter. When I make a request, you are forced to. His footsteps stopped. Then, using his height to look straight down at her face with an oppressive air, he said, That is enough. His cold gaze emphasized his words. My patience for your highness has run out for today. She looked at the threatening shadow looming over her, with a hint of fear. You must understand when to stop. Then he turned to leave, but he did not forget to tell Edric nearby, take Her Highness back to her quarters. She watched his retreating figure with a sense of disappointment. He did not even ask why I wanted to move. I guess he does not care at all about what I think. Finally, she grimaced and bit her lip hard. I truly wish he would just drop dead. After all, I am being forced into a marriage as soon as this journey ends. Even if he becomes a corpse tomorrow morning, I would not care. The next morning, contrary to her expectations, the journey continued peacefully. The procession proceeded as usual. No one was injured or shed blood. The peaceful days passed by. After crossing Sortika, a small city in the northwest, the group continued heading north. A maid placed a tea set inside the carriage. Thalia glanced at it. She told herself, I must not let my guard down around Mother's attendants. In her eyes, that woman was like a demon soaked in blood. Everything she touched was accompanied by dark conspiracies, like a shadow. If not today, then tomorrow, or the day after. Her eyes caught sight of Barkas and Ayla walking together, and she wondered, am I afraid of it, or am I looking forward to it? Thalia rolled her eyes and looked out the window. Sitting in the carriage, she cursed, just drop dead, all of you. Night fell once more. Even though she had previously thought it better to see Barkas's corpse than his living self, she lay in bed, unable to sleep. Then she sat up and looked toward the tent door. Her face turned pale as she wondered, what if something happens to Barkas during the night? Then Thalia rushed out of the tent. I have to go check if Barkas is safe. The night inside the forest was silent. Thalia's black horse was tilting its head to look at the moon. Further away, she stood quietly watching them. The moonlight shone down on Barkas's face. He sat by the stream with his horse. Her eyes widened at the scene before her. The black horse rubbed its head against his shoulder, as if acting spoiled. He followed suit, stroking its mane. Barkas kissed the black horse's cheek. For some reason, Thalia's face involuntarily flushed red. Only then did he sense someone approaching. She quickly hid behind a large tree trunk to escape his search. Thalia covered her face in self-loathing. No matter how many times she tried to dig it out or cut it away, this feeling continued to grow like a malignant tumor. She tried to regain her composure and breathed deeply. How can I ever let go of this heartache? Thalia closed her eyes tightly and urged herself, let us go back. A voice interrupted her thoughts. So, you were here. She turned her head to look. Beside him, Ayla had been standing there for some time. Thalia's eyes widened in panic. Ayla. Across the way, she tucked her hair back and sat down in that manner. Ayla took off her shoes and set them aside. Then she soaked her feet in the cool water. Behind her, Barkas stood watch. The moonlight illuminated the two of them. She smiled gently, while Barkas stared at her, unable to look away. The sight made Thalia glare with intense jealousy. He leaned down to dry Ayla's feet and reminded her, the weather is turning cold. He knelt and gently put her shoes back on. She turned around. Then she quickly dashed into the forest. Her foot accidentally tripped over a large tree root. A loud thud echoed. Thalia's body lay sprawled on the ground. Her hands involuntarily trembled with resentment. She thought of Cenobia. If her mother saw this, she would mock her. That voice and those hateful eyes surfaced in her mind. You have two choices. One is to seize the man you want at any cost. Two, since you're going to be a loser anyway, try to be a bit less pathetic. Thalia rolled over, putting her hands over her face and mumbling to herself, I won't. Then she left herself lying there, looking up at the sky. Other than praying for this suffering to end quickly, she did not know what else she could do to be like her mother. The knights quickly searched around the forest. Edric was startled when he found her. Princess. He quickly ran over. Where on earth did you go without saying a word? How many times have I told you not to wander around without a guard? His eyes widened in shock. Her gaze was still dull, and her clothes were stained with mud. Thalia calmly walked toward the carriage, while Edric continued to fret. That appearance. What happened to you? Did you run into some trouble? His voice was firm. Your Highness, it is my duty to protect your safety. So, but she interrupted him coldly. To anyone else, it might look like you actually care about me. Thalia turned back, leaving Edric stunned. It seems you received instructions not to take your eyes off this rebellious princess for even a second. Her eyes were full of loathing. You were the fool standing there dazed and lost me. Why are you blaming me now? Then she slammed the door shut, startling Edric. He shouted in pain. My hand? Damn it. I was holding the door and you just slammed it. What am I supposed to do? While she turned away in contempt. Next, Thalia pulled the curtains shut and muttered, Talk all you want. Ignoring the world's gossip was the first thing I learned in the palace. If I cared about everything people said, I would have gone mad long ago. Outside, Edric turned and left, feeling hurt. Later, the army stopped at a temple. Basilisk clasped his hands and smiled in welcome. Thank you for your hard work, travelling such a long distance to get here. Gers, leading the group, was a bit suspicious. "You are the head of this monastery. Are you of a mixed-race tribe?" He bowed. "That is correct, your noble royal highness. I am Basilis, the one in charge of managing this monastery." Gers thought to himself, a half-blood in the northeast. This is not unusual. He dismounted his horse under Basilis's welcome. "A sincere welcome to all of you to Mordowan." Hearing this, Gers smiled and looked around. This land is where the late Emperor Darian achieved his first victory over the north, and it is also the sacred place where he received the revelation regarding his mission to unify the nations. "I feel immensely joyful to set foot on this land." He held the horse's reins and requested, "I wish to receive a blessing in the name of the saints. Pray that the God's grace will always fill the path ahead for me and my sister." Basilis bowed. "I humbly serve with great joy," he calmly suggested. "For now, I would like to invite your highness to my residence to rest after such a long and tiring journey. What do you think? To serve your highness, we have prepared a lavish banquet several days in advance." Hearing this, Gers was momentarily stunned. He looked over at Edric and thought, "If we do not stay at the pilgrim's guest house, but at the monastery head's residence instead, I fear people will see it as political lobbying." But Barcus remained cold and said nothing. Then he calmly met that gaze. "Please do as you wish, your highness." Gers confirmed. "Fine. We will stay at the monastery head's residence tonight." Suddenly Gers spoke up. "Take good care of Isla. This is her first time traveling so far, so everything will feel strange and inconvenient for her." Nearby, the black horse was chewing on Barcus's cloak. He watched this scene in disbelief. Then he pouted and thought, "It would be nice if he were as attentive to my sister as he is to that horse." Afterward, Gers looked toward Thalia's carriage. His face clearly showed his disgust. Still staying cautious even now, or has she finally learned her place? Inside the carriage, Thalia curled up in loneliness. Gers told himself, "I planned to snap her neck the moment she pulled a stunt, but she has not even shown her face the whole trip. That bastard girl, I want to tear limb from limb." Night gradually descended. Gers looked up. It seems business in the Holy Land is quite profitable. His hand held a wine glass. His body was soaking in a large bathtub. His lifestyle was no less extravagant than that of a high noble. A servant reminded him, "The meal has been prepared in the hall downstairs, sir." In the hallway of the residence, Barcus was already at the banquet. Gers walked in, and those around him bowed. Then he glanced at Barcus with an annoyed expression. "No matter how I look at him, he is insufferable." Barcus remained indifferent. "Though he has never once disobeyed me, he always makes me wary. Should I really entrust my sister to someone like him?" He walked while questioning. "Where is Isla?" Barcus replied. "Her highness is resting at the priestess's building. She said she would not attend the banquet." Gers understood. Camping outdoors for several days would naturally make her tired. He stated firmly, "I have prepared recovery medicine, so you need not worry." Gers reminded him with some dissatisfaction, "Ayla is your fiancée. Shouldn't you pay more attention to her?" Barcus closed his eyes and said, as if it were obvious, "I am always attentive to her highness. The princess is resting comfortably. I say this to put your highness's mind at ease, so please do not feel offended." But he pouted and thought, "Should I be glad he treats other women even worse? A man about to obtain the Empire's most precious treasure does not even know how to be grateful." Basilis clasped his hands and smiled at them. "Thank you for attending, your royal highness. Now, please sit." At the lavish banquet table, Gers sat in the center. "Thank you for hosting us like this. Everyone sit." Barcus stood behind him, escorting him. The people in the residence looked toward him. They whispered to each other, "The appearance of the Imperial Knight Commander is truly extraordinary." Gers, meanwhile, picked up his wine glass, unhappy. He always attracts more attention than necessary. Then he muttered, "I should thank the monastery head for preparing this pleasant gathering." Suddenly a voice rang out, startling him. "I hope this will be a memorable time for everyone." Thalia walked in with a laugh, exactly like her mother's. Gers's face darkened with rage. The room fell silent accordingly. Their eyes were all fixed on Thalia. She was wearing a magnificent gold outfit. With every step she took, the people in the monastery blushed. Gers slammed his wineglass onto the table in anger, his face dark with rage. He stood up. "You! How dare you show your face here looking like that? Didn't you hear my warning not to let me see you?" But she calmly pulled out the chair next to him. "Since I could not disobey your highness, I even went through the trouble of dressing up like this." As Thalia sat down, Gers approached her irritably. "What the hell are you saying?" Then she glanced at him with a smug look. "It is not like you are unaware of my unpleasant personality. Sending the Imperial Knight Commander himself to deliver a message was not it, because you missed your little sister to death." He looked at her with disgust while she continued to tease him. Since the Crown Prince was so desperate, I had to meet those expectations. Thalia propped her chin on her hand happily. It is so good to see you like this. You are happy too, are not you, brother? But Gez's voice was full of annoyance. I was very happy until you showed up. He ground his teeth. How much more disrespectful are you going to be? Do you want to see just how much I can tolerate from you? Thalia interlaced her fingers, her eyes full of hurt. Why do you say such heartbreaking words? The eyes of the crowd were fixed on her. I only responded to the invitation. I do not understand what I did to make you so angry with your adorable youngest sister. The monks' faces turned bright red. Suddenly Thalia turned to Basilis. Don't you think he is being too much? He was confused. Yes, but... Suddenly a hand grabbed her wrist. Gez angrily pulled her up. You look like you are in heat. He ground his teeth in mockery. If you are that thirsty, go pick someone at random from your group of attendants. If you cause a scandal that tarnishes the royal name, I will make sure you do not keep that pretty face. She looked up at him with excitement. What are you planning to do to me, brother? Then Thalia stood up, bringing her face close to his and whispering, When you say that, I want to satisfy your expectations so badly it is driving me crazy. He ground his teeth in fury, unable to take it anymore. Gez's hand reached for her neck. Right here, you brat. I will. But Barcus, from behind, grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back. Your Highness, he glanced back. The atmosphere seemed to freeze because of this sudden action. Gez was confused. What is this? While Barcus calmly reminded him, Everyone is waiting for your Highness's toast. He was flustered by the oppressive feeling for a moment. Throughout his body, Gez felt an invisible surge of bloodlust. His eyes met Barcus's indifferent gaze, and he told himself, I thought I was being threatened. Then he glanced down at the hand resting on his shoulder. Finally, he closed his eyes and let out a sharp breath. Endure it. This brat is just trying to provoke me. Then Gez shoved her hand away. I am wasting time on useless, trivial matters. Then he looked at the monks. Fine. Everyone, please eat. Gez raised his wine glass. Once again, I want to thank the monastery head for preparing this gathering. I hope today becomes a meaningful day for all. Everyone at the table raised their glasses. He looked down at her, sitting there motionless. Beside her, Barcus took her hand. Then he gently opened her palm. He placed the wine glass in her hand and whispered, As a guest, please maintain basic etiquette, Your Highness. Barcus's face remained expressionless as he stared at her. Thalia looked back in shock. Her eyes were full of anger as she looked at him. Gez watched the situation, thinking, she is going to throw something and cause a scene again. But he waited, and nothing happened. She actually raised her glass, much to his astonishment. Gez looked over suspiciously. Is she plotting something? Then he brought the glass to his mouth. No, why bother with such a trivial thing? On the other side, Thalia also raised her glass. Gez told himself, I will just wait until the day I inherit the throne, and wipe her from this world. She gripped the wine glass tightly in her hand. Then she set it back on the table. She remembered the gentle touch of his hand just now. Her hand involuntarily clenched beneath the table. Her head hung low, her face flushing red. She could feel the gazes and her own regret. I was wrong. I should not have worn this dress. On the other side, Barcus's gaze was still fixed on her, and she peeked up at him, always making me worry. Suddenly a voice spoke. Is the food to your liking, Your Highness? She looked toward Basilis. Her eyes were cold and searching. Her voice was still somewhat haughty, startling him. It is a bit plain compared to the food in the palace. She picked up a piece of cake from the table. Then she slowly put it in her mouth. If I just eat something, maybe he won't try to talk to me. While Barcus was still staring at her, Thalia brought the wine glass to her mouth. She felt nauseous. The gazes of the monks were still glued to her. They observed her with blushing faces. Thalia sat there like a beautiful living doll. Even the attendant carrying the tray stared at her without blinking. They did not even take their eyes off her while drinking. A flicker of disgust appeared in the depths of her eyes. Finally, Thalia slammed the table and stood up. This banquet is disappointing. I am going back to sleep. Gez looked at her angrily. That thing again. Without waiting for permission, she turned and left. In the empty hallway, Thalia walked on. She looked around. She brought her hand to her mouth. Feeling slightly uncomfortable, her eyes fell into deep thought. Thalia's figure was full of loneliness. She had to wonder herself, I do not understand why I put on this act. What is the point of showing off and causing trouble? She remembered Cenobie's words. It seems the Crown Prince completely cannot stand your existence. Sometimes, I feel like he rejects you even more than I do. She remembered Gez's crazed image when he saw her. Your Highness, please calm down. Let go. Opposite him, Thalia was trembling, huddled in Isla's arms. She sobbed, Mother. The woman looked up at the whispering crowd. Oh dear, that little girl. Her hand continued to stroke the crying Thalia. Then Cenobia kissed her forehead. She finally calmed down. Her mother's face looked at Thalia with calculation since the day of the memorial ceremony for the late empress. Whenever she saw that satisfied look, she would take every opportunity to provoke Gareth. Everyone gossiped about them. Her reputation had already hit rock bottom, and now it was even worse. But the Crown Prince's reputation was also being damaged. She remembered her mother's kiss on her forehead. Doing this will make Mother very happy. Thinking of this, she leaned her head against her hand and mocked herself. Have I reached the point where I still want to be loved by my mother? In the long hallway, she was all alone. Even if she destroyed Gareth's reputation, her mother would not love her. She thought of that beautiful but conniving woman. Mother loved no one, not the Emperor, and not even Astros, whom she pampered to the extreme. Everyone was just a tool or a means. So, if she did not constantly pull these stunts to prove herself, she would truly become worthless in her mother's eyes. Suddenly, a voice called from behind, "Your Highness the Princess." She turned back and recognized the man who had been sitting next to her earlier. Thalia paused, wondering, did he follow me? In a deserted place like this, her face was full of annoyance. What is it? Her voice was impatient. I asked, what is it? While her heart screamed, get lost. He scratched his head. About what you said earlier. Thalia was confused. What did I say? He stammered. That. His face was bright red as he peeked at her. At the banquet just now, she stepped back. Thalia avoided his gaze. I do not understand what on earth you are trying to say, she told herself, must not show any signs of weakness. Then she turned around. I am leaving. But he followed her. You said you wanted to satisfy the Crown Prince's expectations. The brat's stammering made Thalia startled. Wasn't that it? At that time, Gers had gripped her hand tightly in a threat. If you are that thirsty, go pick someone at random from your attendants. She had played along to tease him. When you say that, I want to satisfy your expectations so badly it is driving me crazy. Only now did she realize. Could it be about that? He smiled and approached. If your highness allows, his hand gradually reached out, making Thalia panic. Thalia stood there frozen in helplessness. Her body would not move. His hand reached for her hair, making her panic. Where does he think he is touching? His other hand was about to touch her face. I have to scream for him to get lost right now. But another hand reached out. That hand gripped the man's arm firmly. Barcus jerked the man's hand back. The man screamed out in pain. Thalia's face darkened with anger. She also looked at him in shock. The air became silent. She backed away. Barcus. Thalia's body touched the wall behind her, trembling. Barcus's face was completely cold. The man looked up at him and shook with fear. He stammered, I was just. Thalia's hand involuntarily clenched tighter. The man pleaded, Your Highness, shut your mouth. He reminded the man, neither side wants to make a scene. Quietly, go back to your place. Then he let go of the man's hand and threatened, You would better not let me catch you until we leave this place. The man was terrified. I will remember. He left, leaving the two of them alone in the hallway. Then Barcus turned his head to look at her. Thalia's heart skipped a beat, and she was too stunned to react. He looked down at her with an unreadable expression. Guiltily, she shifted her gaze to the side. He turned to leave, not forgetting to call out to her. Your Highness, follow me. Barcus announced from up ahead. I will escort you back to your quarters. Thalia watched his back in amazement. She had almost run into something horrific. She was scared to death. He stood by the door, watching her and waiting. She wondered at that expressionless face. But why are you so indifferent? Thalia knitted her brows in annoyance, then followed him anyway. At Thalia's quarters, the two of them stood beneath the walkway. She snapped an order. We are here. Stop following me. But Barcus blocked her path. He slammed his hand against the wall behind her. She looked up at him. He leaned in close, pinning her against the wall. His height made Thalia panic. As he stepped forward, she instinctively backed away. What is this? Her voice was full of sudden confusion. Then, Barcus ground his teeth and whispered, You have played with fire and been burned once already. Thalia stood frozen like a statue. A weary look finally appeared on his face. He eventually looked away and sighed. You should be more careful by now. She stammered, What? But Barcus cut her off. His next words sent a shock through Thalia. Do you really want to abandon yourself that much? She raised her hand, ready to slap him. But Barcus caught it firmly, staring her down. He reminded her coldly, If that is the case, then restrain yourself for the time being. He leaned in and added a reminder, Because I do not want any more trouble until this journey is over. She stood there, paralyzed. Then he let go of her hand. He stepped back. Well then, Barcus turned coldly to leave. I believe you understand. She imagined herself holding a short sword, then plunging it straight into his back, through that cloak. She wanted to see his expression when she did it. She would pull the sword out and watch this man slowly fall. Petals and his blood would mingle together. Blood splattered across Thalia's crazed face. She looked down at Barkas's body, lying in a pool of blood and scattered flowers. That face remained as cold as ever, but it was all just a fantasy. She watched Barkas's retreating back. Her eyes were filled with malice. Her hands hung limp as if she were gripping something. She stood silently, watching Barkas leave. Only then did tears of humiliation begin to flow. She turned away to wipe the tears. Thalia tried to suppress the sobs on her face. Her lonely figure entered the resting quarters. She did not look back even once. The night continued to embrace the surroundings. The next day, Ayla and Gers were under the escort of Barkas. Thalia watched them from behind the glass window above. The three of them entered the sanctuary. The ceremony was underway. As if nothing had happened, though this was a mandatory rite for the royals, Thalia snapped, "I am tired, so I won't participate," and she was absent. She looked at Gers. Normally the ceremony would be postponed, but due to the Crown Prince's persistence, it proceeded as planned. Then she looked at Basilis, who was still smiling, and mocked. Perhaps the monastery is relieved they do not have to give a god's blessing to a bastard. She rested her chin on her hand with a hint of regret. I should have participated. The holy spirits and spears. Thalia looked down at the three people offering sacrifices below. Next to them, Ayla and Barkas stood side by side. She could not hide her disgust. She quickly pulled the curtains shut. Thalia lay on the bed, feeling miserable. Between the two of them, I do not even know who I hate more. She recalled the scene with that man in the monastery yesterday, and his eyes filled with impatient disdain. She gripped her pillow and laughed mockingly. He must be completely sick of me by now. His voice still echoed in her head. You have played with fire and been burned once already. You should be more careful by now. This happened a few months before my 16th birthday, on a sunny day. Barkas stood looking at the sunlight outside the window. She called Barkas. Look, Barkas was 20 then. Thalia peeked out from the dressing area. How does this look? Barkas looked at her and remarked, It looks a bit mature. Since Barkas's time as my knight was only to last until my coming of age. Barkas looked toward her. He remained silent for a moment. Thalia told herself, I became impatient and tried to get Barkas's attention. Her face turned bright red. Then she stepped out irritably. I asked, How is it? Barkas shook his head, like a child trying too hard to wear adult clothes. It does not suit you. She went back into the dressing room. Her face was full of anger at Barkas's attitude, and she was determined. I will make that cold man's heart flutter. She picked up an outfit. This one. It is a bit suggestive. Thalia put on the clothes. No. She looked at the hem of the dress and noted, The older I get, the more I look like mother. I am approaching her perfect beauty. Then she stood before the mirror, admiring her own beauty. Soon I will be the most beautiful woman in the world. She stepped out. How about this? Barkas saw it and frowned in annoyance. Thalia twirled toward him, while he looked on helplessly. She stroked her hair and looked to the side nonchalantly. A dress for a coming-of-age ceremony should be at this level, right? Thalia sighed. Then he made a suggestion that surprised her. The first dress. His face was full of helplessness. Please wear that one. She was a bit surprised by this request. She scratched her head and approached him. What? She blushed and looked up. What is this? It turns out you were just pretending not to care. Barkas also looked down at her, his eyes wavering slightly. She covered her mouth and smiled mischievously. It seems you were watching quite closely. After she finished changing and came out, she asked again, You said this one, right? Ignoring the fact that she was checking herself in the mirror, Barkas kept staring. A very happy smile bloomed on her lips. He still could not take his eyes off her. Thalia also looked toward him, feeling self-conscious. She was dazed. Then, facing Barkas, who was looking at her, she noticed he was staring again. Suddenly she pulled his sleeve. For some reason, Barkas felt a bit different. His tone was gentler than before. She suggested, If I wore this to dance, I would probably look like an elven queen. Thalia wondered, could it be that Barkas also feels regret about our upcoming parting? She pulled him to the center of the room and said, Don't just stand there. Come and practice with me. He could only sigh as he looked at her. She noted, Since we have been together so long, a sort of love-hate feeling is bound to arise. He then cooperated and followed her, which made her happy. There, see, if it were before, Barkas would not have reacted. Thalia looked up at his face, which was gentler than before. But now, he let her lead him without resisting. She was surprised to realize that something had changed. Next, she took his hand excitedly. Hurry, hurry. Her face grew even more joyful. This is a privilege for you. Barkas still looked down at her without replying, but he followed along with her dance steps. When Thalia stepped back, He stepped forward. Her hand gripped his sleeve. The two danced in the sunlight. She twirled happily. The two looked directly at each other in the room, filled with excitement and warmth. A pure smile remained on Thalia's lips. Barkas's eyes widened, as if she were the only thing he could see. Suddenly Thalia kicked a crate behind her. She lost her balance and fell backward, causing him concern. Her foot stepped on some clothes on the floor, making her footing unstable. In a panic, she grabbed tightly onto his sleeve. Barkas was also startled and fell with her. Then he embraced her as they tumbled together. His foot stepped heavily on another dress, causing him to slip. Barkas was alarmed. Immediately after, both of them fell to the ground. He turned and held her in his arms. Then he asked worriedly, "Are you all right?" A cry sounded from within. She looked at him irritably. "I told you to keep the room tidy." Thalia looked at him in confusion, because he was her escort knight. Then she turned to get up, her voice snapping. "If my bottom is bruised, I won't forgive you, you useless knight." But a sudden pull made her cry out. Thalia's eyes widened. She turned back to question him. "Did you pull my hair?" Barkas calmly held up his sleeve and explained, "Your hair is caught in my button." He frowned, bringing his hand up to get a better look. But Thalia repeatedly punched his chest and screamed, "It hurts, you idiot." He looked down at her helplessly. Seeing this, she stopped and looked up in confusion. Then, feeling even more helpless, she shouted, What is it? Speak up if you are dissatisfied." Thalia leaned down. Then Barkas reached around her and touched that golden blonde hair. She pressed close to him, still not having regained her composure. Her eyes were met with his firm, partially exposed chest. The scene fell silent. Barkas patiently tried to untangle the hair. He raised his hand slightly, pulling her even closer to him. Two of his fingers held her hair so it would not pull against her scalp, while his other hand tried to free it from the button. His face showed a bit of impatience. She pressed against his chest, her face flushing. The silence made her anxious. "Isn't this too close?" His hand was still patiently untangling her hair. She clenched her fists. They were so close she could smell him the scent of mint. Embarrassed, she stammered, "If you break even a single strand of hair, I won't let it go." Above her, Barkas remained patient and did not reply. His hand pulled her closer, and he lowered his head. This time, her eyes were right against his collarbone. His arm was still around the back of her neck. Thalia was completely enveloped in his arms. Her face was beet red. She closed her eyes tightly, not daring to look around as she urged, "Are you done yet?" She looked down at her hands, gripping her dress tightly. Her face suddenly became stunned by the color of her skin. "What is this? Am I really this red? How pathetic and pitiful." Then she tried to hide her hands behind her clothes. "He is usually so quick with everything. Why is he so slow with this?" Thalia made a decision. "Fine. Just cut it." Her face was bright red as she looked away. Barkas frowned upon hearing that. He reached down and drew the small sword from his hip. Then he pulled out the sword in front of her. Thalia looked at it with fear. Her hand instinctively grabbed his shirt. Her body trembled as she huddled into his chest, which surprised Barkas. His hand holding the short sword paused. Her face flushed as she mumbled, "Even so, don't cut too much of my hair." Thalia looked up at him softly. Then her hair was finally released. Thalia looked down at her hair. Then she saw the button that had fallen to the ground. She was a bit surprised. Then she gently picked it up and looked at it. At the same time, Barkas stood up, his small sword already back at his hip. He looked at her, still dazed by the button. "How much longer are you going to sit there?" Thalia peeked up, feeling awkward. She stood up and held out the button. "Here." But Thalia calmly adjusted her sleeves. "I do not need it. Throw it away." He looked outside. Then he looked at the mess in the room. She was still peeking up at him. He tilted his head to look down at her. Sunset was falling. He suggested, "May I take my leave now?" She confirmed. Yes. Night gradually descended. Thalia gazed at the button. She placed it in her jewelry box with excitement. That night, because of that indescribable fluttering feeling, I could not sleep a wink. She lay in bed, unable to drift off. Thalia remembered his gaze. Could it be? Then she remembered the way he held her, and denied it. No way. It could not be. She thought about how she could pull his hand and fantasized. But maybe. She hugged her pillow shyly, but that happy dream did not last long. One day, she backed away in shock. It can't be. Everyone was looking toward the closed door. Thalia panicked. Barkas and Ayla, her face was full of panic. It is impossible. She ran quickly toward the door. Her hand grabbed the handle and then suddenly stopped. Inside, the voice of a woman made Thalia surprised. "Isn't it true that you do not love her at all? It is just a political marriage." The woman collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "Please, just say it is like that." Through the crack in the door, she looked at them in confusion. "Who is that?" Barkis coldly pushed the crying girl away. His face was completely cold as he looked down at the girl. I do not know what my answer means to you, my lady. What difference does a political reason make? Seeing his expression, she was deeply shocked. The woman, crying incessantly, received his cold words. I have promised to take the first princess as my wife, and I intend to keep that promise. He stared at her and emphasized, I do not know what you expect from me, but I made it clear from the start that I cannot return your feelings. Thalia closed her eyes, feeling a bit troubled as she reminded her, I hope that from now on, we won't have these awkward encounters anymore. Our engagement date has been officially set, so I want to avoid unnecessary rumors. Thalia's hand let go of the door handle. That woman was still crying. She turned to leave. Her footsteps moved more and more hurriedly, as if she were fleeing. Thalia covered her mouth in shock. She thought of the pathetic image of that woman. If I had been just a little faster, she still had not escaped the shock. Then, the person in that situation would have been me. If only. She remembered his cold face and imagined Barkis using that same gaze to look at someone begging for love like her. A sudden fear arose. If he also sees me as a nuisance, I will die right then and there. I truly began to fear Barkis, while he was adjusting his sleeves. His face was perfectly calm, and Thalia realized that with just a few words, this man could drive me to my death. She stood waiting outside as he slowly approached. Barkis's hand reached out to block a sharp branch in the flower bush. Dangerous. Thalia's eyes were filled with repulsion. His action made him pause and look at her. But she immediately pulled away and screamed, Don't come near me. She quickly left as if running away. Later, at the main palace, she thought, If I can't control these feelings, I will have to live in extreme suffering. Thalia was wearing the suggestive clothes she had shown him before. She fell into thought. I began to struggle in despair. More than ever, I chose to wear the clothes Barkis said did not suit me. Men looked at her with lust. I suddenly remembered the youthful appearance of Lady Cenobia, for the princess looks exactly like her. Barkis stood in a corner, watching her and those men. Perhaps back then, I wanted to show myself off. She sat in the center, surrounded by men. The banquet hall was full of her mother's worshippers. Her exquisite face and body were provocatively exposed through the haze of alcohol. Thalia was desperately proving herself. Look at what you have missed. There are countless men who desire me. Barkis frowned. Thalia told herself, I will become a woman more beautiful than Ayla, even more than my mother. She peeked at him, but his face showed no expression at all. This made Thalia angry. Why are you so indifferent? Those men continuously touched her body with crazed lust.
You are drunk today too.
Oh my, let me help you. They were unrestrained, while she was soft with drink. Thalia's eyes were completely hollow. They completely saw me as a doll. An infatuated man was kissing the back of her hand and smiling. You truly are very beautiful, princess. But those adoring gazes, she was completely immersed in their gazes, which made her feel like a goddess. Those banquets happened frequently, and Thalia imagined, it does not matter if I do not have Barkis. This
Is no big deal.
Thalia was happily playing cards. I won again. Yes, right, you won. She turned to that person, who inquired, It is time everyone remembered my name. One of them replied, Alice, was it? The person next to him interrupted, No, she looks like an Alice. Let us just call her Alice. The man whose name was being guessed was a bit disappointed. What do you mean, looks like Alice? Then he looked over at her. Princess, do you remember my name? She replied. It seems to be Helena. The group chatted excitedly. Last time you said I was Betty. Me, or Rabbit. Now you do not even call me by your own name anymore. It seems I still have not left a deep impression on you. Barkis frowned, watching them warily. One of them stood behind her chair. Your Highness, you are dead drunk again. The man leaned on the chair, smiling at her. Suddenly Thalia remembered Margus. He was also a bit surprised that she remembered him. The man took out a small gift bag and explained, Here, a gift for you. At the princess's age, you should be playing with this instead of cards. She looked at the teddy bear, a bit stunned. What is this? I am not a child. Then he suggested, Let us finish the puzzle we started last time together, shall we? She hugged the bear and followed him. There is no end to you. This insolent man approached me in a strange way. They looked at the partially finished puzzle. He did not touch me. He only gave advice or gifts. His face was full of confusion as he held a puzzle piece. I am focusing. Please be quiet, Your Highness. While she giggled beside him. Then he immediately grabbed the wineglass next to her and set it on the table. Your face is making me lose focus. Princess, you should limit your drinking. She looked on regretfully. My glass? He smiled gently like an uncle caring for her. Why bother with harmful things? They won't help your highness at all. But she rested her chin on her hand, tacitly accepting this care.
You insolent man.
Beside them, Barkis silently observed. Later they played cards again. She wondered at the current warmth. Is this what it feels like to have an uncle? Her smile grew more joyful. I, who always longed for love, had exposed my weakness too easily. That night was 4 days before her coming-of-age ceremony. The man arrived with a gift box in hand. Look at this, Your Highness. I finally found the puzzle set you mentioned. Thalia stood at the door, watching him boast. Your Highness can't imagine how hard I worked to get it. I did not even put this much effort into the gift for the Emperor. Her face was a bit helpless. Magus. Then she rebuked him. Do you know what time it is? He scratched his head and justified. Originally, I intended to give it on Your Highness's birthday, but I have to leave the capital urgently tomorrow, so I took the liberty of coming here. She was helpless before his request. Your Highness, could you overlook this rudeness of mine? The lights in her room came on again. Fine then. Come in. The man confirmed, yes. At Thalia's room, she was a bit tense. Aside from the maids and escort knights, that was the first time she had let anyone else into her quarters, a clean place. She hesitated for a bit while he followed excitedly. Should we go to the study?